Did the test already? Yeah. Eh bien, nous avons dit bienvenue pour la session qui consiste aujourd'hui, pour jeudi 10 décembre 2024, avec ça c'est une session qui était envoyée depuis c'est mardi semaine passée. Mardi ça était pour changer puisque à dernier moment pour raison de l'ambassade, le gouvernement a envoyé une session la semaine passée pour aujourd'hui. Avec aujourd'hui, il va commencer normalement à 10h comme qui a fait, c'est comme la routine. Mais aujourd'hui, il a commencé, c'est l'air du musée à midi, mais il a parlé que c'est différent du Parlement qui a commencé à s'assembler. Il a tenu une activité bon matin, on appelle l'hôpital polyclinique. Ça a été l'hôpital Victoria avant, puis c'est polyclinique Dr. Betty Wells. C'est ça, il a tenu une bonne cérémonie plus bonne pour matcher une bonne occasion qui fait qu'il a commencé plus tard aujourd'hui. Eh bien, aujourd'hui, nous avons discuté en motion par le Premier ministre, honorable Philippe J. Pierre, qui est aussi responsable pour la finance, l'économie, ça c'est développement économique et puis l'économie jeunesse. Et aussi, il est ministre aux affaires justice et puis sécurité nationale. Et qui a établi en motion qui a été aujourd'hui pour le Parlement autorisation pour déclarer que ça c'est loi simplicité pour l'année 2022. Enfin, la gagne un anti-changement selon la loi simplicité faite en l'année 2022 avec le Parlement qui a fait résolution pour ça VAT, ça c'est VAT qui a changé. Enfin, un changement en affaires VAT pour certains bagages, particulièrement les affaires touristes, c'est une incentives, si bagages pour ces touristes, avec aussi particulièrement pour les situations touristes, ils increasent à ça durant la session qui a commencé aujourd'hui. Il a commencé à n'importe quel moment. Mais aussi, quand il a discuté ça, il a créé ces bills-là. Bills, c'est la loi qui le gouvernement a passé. Avec bills, c'est la loi qui a passé. C'est par le Premier ministre qui a présenté. C'est pour paiement, système et puis service. Il y a un bill pour ça, et bien il a fait présenter pour la première fois en Caïconsi. Nous pouvons aussi réussir qu'il a passé en plein délai, Caïconsi il présenté. C'est toi pour ça il a créé. Après ça, nous allons aller. Madame ne peut pas parler de moi, je ne peux pas comprendre ce qu'il a dit. Mais ce que nous avons dit, c'est présenter. Ok. Alright. So, excusez-moi, nous sommes officiers police là, qui fait un testing là-bas, et maintenant pour partir à comprendre ça qu'il a dit. Alors, maintenant pour avancer, c'est ça qu'il a demandé de faire. Excusez-nous pour ça, mais quand nous dit, vous Lucia et puis nous, avec tout à l'heure, nous avons dit nous, jeune et puis nous, avant de faire la présentation. Comme je l'ai dit avant la police, il était là, nous avons dit système de service, et aussi nous avons regardé pour loi à ces taxes. Avec CAI. Aussi, le gouvernement a discuté, le Parlement a discuté aujourd'hui, ça a créé patent. Ça, c'est la loi. Comment on dit ça? C'est patent, c'est bagaille quoi? By mon droit. Pour ça, il créé, bien créé. Aussi, nous avons une loi qui a passé, ça a créé une organisation qui n'est pas affiliée puis gouvernement. Nous avons un amendement qui a fait sur ça, avec aussi un autre amendement sur la loi qui qui concerne banque. Aussi, le gouvernement a discuté ça a créé intellectual property et puis unfair competition quand il a dit anglais, ça veut dire propriétaire cervelle. Ça c'est ça moun quoi ça qui en cervelle yo qu'on livre mon écrit avec bagaille comme ça, il y a un amendement à ce loi ça là avec une compétition qui pas juste. Aussi, le gouvernement a discuté, pas discuté, c'est passé loi à l'assurance corporation, l'assurance nationale. Ça nous enchaîne, on a créé NIC, et puis un amendement à ce loi, ça l'a fait. Et puis, dernièrement, ça a créé Child Justice, un amendement à ce loi qui a concerné justice pour Timamay. Je vais passer par Virgile à présent qui a dit nous plus en anglais.
Okay, as referring here to the other people, Michael, we noticed that there are a number of papers to be laid, as well as motions and bills to be tabled today in this sitting of the House of Assembly, what we suspect may very well be the last sitting for 2024. On the motion paper today, on the order paper, there are two motions. One, and I will read that Parliament do authorize the Attorney General to make an order to declare that the 2022 supplement to the revised edition of the laws of St. Lucia, as specified in the order, shall come into force on such date as may be appointed by such order and as an authoritative version of the law. The second motion reads that be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 6 order, which would amend Schedule 3 of the Act. And as we go into the debate, we will be giving more details on those motions. Now there are a few bills which will be tabled in today's sitting. Some are down for first reading, including payment systems and services, a land, house and tax amendment, bill dealing with patent, non-governmental organizations amendment, a banking amendment, intellectual property and unfair competition, a national insurance corporation amendment, and a child justice amendment. And it is interesting that all of those bills, Michael, are down for their first reading. And as I look through, I'm seeing the non-governmental organizations. I await with keen interest on the details of the non-governmental organizations. As you know, there are several organizations that are tasked with doing certain activities, whether it is social, environmental, and most times these organizations assist, in some of the work which the government does. And non-governmental organizations play a critical role in our society. And on this order paper, it looks like the government will be paying some attention to non-governmental organizations. I'm not sure what the details are concerning this bill, but as I say, I await with keen interest on what the details of that bill would entail. There's the land and house tax, which is an amendment number 2, and it goes through the first reading. Again, we await the details of what this bill will entail. The intellectual property and unfair competition. As we know, intellectual property deals with the rights of individuals, particularly musicians like artists and whatever comes from their mind, the creatives, if you will, and it has to do with them protecting what they produce, what they create. And so again, the details would be spelled out once the bills are presented or tabled later on in this sitting. As we look around, there are a few people mingling around. Some of the parliamentarians are in, Michael, and we await we are anticipating a quick start, if you will, perhaps next 10 minutes or so, as because most of the parliamentarians are here, and so we do not anticipate it will be too long before the session commences.
Mais comme on a dit avant au venir à Virgil, c'est pas normal qui session qui commencer à l'aise là, mais la dernière activité bon matin c'est pour déclarer pour ouvrir place Betty Wells, ça qui était l'hôpital Victoria avant, avec après ça puisqu'il m'a supposé toutes ces membres parlement t'es pour là avec yo décidé pour commencer aujourd'hui malgré sinon ça nous c'est un pile différentes lois qui ont passé malgré c'est pour premier fois il a présenté mais il ça comme la coutume il toujours qu'à demander pour permission pour aller plus loin à présent nous avons chargé en la porte là avec Mesla avec session qui a commencé à présent.
Let us pray. Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom and understanding, we thy unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultation, and grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affection, the result of all counsel may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and the happiness of the King, the public will, peace, and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the united and knit together of the hearts of all persons and estate within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all evermore. Amen.
Good morning, members, and of course, just good afternoon, sorry. And just for the record, so that the Hansard properly records it, I want to advise that the sitting is late because of a very important event, the opening of the eye clinic this morning at which members were present. I beg to announce that His Excellency the Governor General has been pleased to assent the following bills: Eastern Caribbean Asset Management Corporation Amendment, Companies Amendment Number 2, Cooperative Societies, Insolvency, Julian Alfred Day, and Money Laundering Prevention Amendment. And speaking of His Excellency, Section 23 of the Constitution states that our Parliament consists of His Majesty, a Senate, and a House of Assembly. In effect, as His Majesty's local representative, His Excellency is the titular head of the Parliament, and I wish you to join with me in wishing him a happy birthday today. I have received apologies from the members from Micoud North, Micoud South, Castries Central, and Castries Southeast. And on behalf of members, I formally extend sincere condolences to Senator Ember Charles and his family on the recent passing of his sister, Laureen. Between Tuesday, 26 November and Thursday, 28 November 2024, the Office of the Director of Audit, in conjunction with the Parliament of St. Lucia, hosted a regional workshop for Public Accounts Committee members and Directors of Audit under the theme, Engaging the Public in Strengthening Accountability through Key Institutions. Senate President Alvina Reynolds declared the workshop open, whilst the Speaker provided closing remarks. It is my view that the conference, held under the auspices of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, IPU, Carousel, the Intose Development Initiative, IDI, and the Parliament of St. Lucia, was an overwhelming success. And I wish to thank the member for Sozel Saltibus for his attendance. Today, we have with us Director of Audit, Yvonne James, along with staff of our department, as several of the papers to be laid are documents prepared by the Director of Audit. Members would also have become aware of the fact that sometime between Friday night and Saturday morning last week, the office of the Parliament was broken into and ransacked. Thankfully, nothing of significance was stolen. So maybe we can have a word with the Minister for Infrastructure. And corrective members are in train. Statements by ministers. Papers to be laid, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Development, Youth Economy, Justice and National Security.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 143 of 2024. Fiscal Incentives, the Ice Factory Order. Statutory Instrument number 147 of 2024, International Business Companies Amendment Regulations. Statutory Instrument number 148 of 2024, Value Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve draft Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 Order. Statutory Instrument number 149 of 2024, Value Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve draft Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule number 4 Order. Statutory Instrument number 150 of 2024, Value Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve the draft Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule number 5 Order. Statutory Instrument number 151 of 2024, Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, number 4 Order. Statutory Instrument number 152 of 2024, Special Development Areas Amendment of Schedule 1, number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument number 153 of 2024, the Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, number 5 Order. Statutory Instrument number 158 of 2024, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, number 16 Order. Statutory Instrument number 156 of 2024, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, number 16 Order. Statutory Instrument number 158 of 2024, Civil Code Marriage License Fees Amendment Order. Statutory Instrument number 159 of 2024, Apostolic Hague Convention Amendment of Schedule 2 Order. Statutory Instrument number 160 of 2024, Legal Profession Eligibility, Nicholas Antonio Jackman Order. Statutory Instrument number 163 of 2024, Stamp Duty Amendment of Schedule number 3, Regulations. Statutory Instrument number 165 of 2024, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, number 17 Order. Financial Services Regulatory Authority Annual Report 2022-23. Financial Services Regulatory Authority Annual Report 2023 to 2024. Office of Director of Audit, Compliance Audit on Direct Purchases. Office of the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Affairs and National Security, December 2021. Office of the Director of Audit, performance audit on strong and resilient public health systems specific to SDG 3D, Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, September 2022. Ministry of Tourism, Investments, Creative Industry, Cultural Information, and Ministry of Equity, Social Justice, Local Government and Empowerment, Transparency, Accountability, Inclusiveness, TAI, Compliance Audit Reports on the Income Support ISP for non-NIC contributors for the period April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture and Information.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 157 of 2024, Citizenship by Investment, Jungji Su, formerly known as Hajing Su, Revocation Order.
Minister for the Public Service, Labour and Gender Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to lay the following paper standing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 154 of 2024, Labour Exemption from the Payment of Work Permit Fees, 1881 Holdings Incorporated Order.
Minister for Commerce, Manufacturing, Business Development, Cooperatives and Consumer Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay the following papers appearing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 155 of 2024, Price Control Amendment Number 16 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 164 of 2024, Price Control Amendment Number 17 Order.
Senior Minister and Minister for Infrastructure, Ports, Transport, Physical Development and Urban Renewal.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table Statutory Instrument Number 144 of 2024, Physical Planning and Development, Land Development Regulations. Statutory Instrument Number 145 of 2024, Physical Planning and Development, Amendment of Schedule 4 Regulations, and Statutory Instrument Number 146 of 2024, Physical Planning and Development Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations.
Motions. Minister for Finance.
Whereas by Section 10(1) of the revised edition of the Laws Act Cap 1.07, the Act, it is provided that a revised edition of the laws or parts of a revised edition of the laws shall come into force as the authoritative version of the law on an effective date specified in an order made by the Attorney General. And whereas Section 10(3) of the Act provides that the Attorney General may, by order published in the Gazette, declare that a revised edition of the laws specified in the order shall come into force on such date as may be appointed by the order. And whereas, by virtue of Section 10(4) of the Act, an order in respect of a revised edition of the laws or a part or parts of the revised edition of the laws shall not be made until after the passing of a resolution of Parliament authorizing the making of such an order. And whereas, pursuant to Section 10 of the Act, Parliament passed a resolution enacted as a statutory instrument number of 2024, authorizing the Attorney General to make an order declaring the effective date of the 2022 supplement to the revised edition of the laws of St. Lucia. And whereas, by virtue of Section 10(5) of the Act, it is provided that the revised edition of the laws or parts of the revised edition of the laws shall be deemed to be in all courts of justice and for all purposes whatsoever, without any question, the sole authentic edition of the laws of St. Lucia in respect of the law contained therein, and in force on the relevant revision date. Now, therefore, by virtue of Section 10 of the Act, the Attorney General makes this order. This order may be cited as the 2022 supplement of the revised edition of the Laws Commencement Order 2024, the 2022 supplement to the revised edition of the Laws of St. Lucia comes into force on publication of this order in the Gazette and includes the Act passed in 2022 set out in Schedule 1. The price of the revised edition of the laws is specified in Schedule 2. Mr. Speaker, this resolution authorizes the Attorney General. It authorizes the Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, to make an order for the 2022 supplement to the revised edition of the laws. The revised edition of the laws, Act Cap 1.07, the Act, is the legislation in St. Lucia that provides for not only the revision of the constitution of the laws of St. Lucia, but also the preparation and publication of revised editions of the laws in various formats. The Attorney General is the Law Revision Commission according to the Act, and is responsible under Section 10(3) of the Act for declaring in an order published in the Gazette that the revised edition of the laws of St. Lucia is effective from the date stated in the order. The order made by the Attorney General as the Law Revision Commission is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament according to Section 10(4) of the Act. The order will give effect to any replacement, insertion, deletion, or amendment of the legislation under Section 13(5) of the Act. When the order is made, the revised edition, in whatever form that it takes, is considered to be the authentic version of the laws of St. Lucia under Section 13(6) of the Act. The form of the 2022 supplement to the revised edition of the laws is in USB storage devices and loose leaf booklets. This is not the first occasion in which the Honourable House is asked to authorize the Attorney General to make an order under the Act. Indeed, this Honourable House recently approved the resolution for the 2021 supplement to the revised edition of the laws, which included the laws enacted in 2021 and many laws that were omitted from the revised edition of the laws. In accordance with the Act, Parliament must, by affirmative resolution, authorize the Attorney General to make an order to declare that the USB storage devices and loose leaf booklets of the 2022 supplement to the revised edition of the laws of St. Lucia are the authentic versions of the laws of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, the draft 2022 supplement to the revised edition of the laws commencement order attached to this resolution provides the commencement date for the revised edition of the laws as the date of the publication of the order in the Gazette. The draft order specifies the acts were passed in 2022 and indicates the incorporation of amendments in existing chapter numbers and in the case of new laws and the chapter numbers assigned to those new laws. In the draft order, the price to be charged for the purchase of each law is specified. This Honourable House, Mr. Speaker, is asked to support the making of the draft order by the Attorney General. As stated before, the draft order before this Honourable House will make the laws passed in 2022 an authentic version of the laws of St. Lucia from the effective date specified in the order and include the prices that will be charged for the sale of these laws. Mr. Speaker, this is self-explanatory. It is to make the 2022 laws as commissioned by the Attorney General to make it the authentic version of the laws for St. Lucia to be followed by all citizens, courts, etc. That as the authentic version of the laws when the order is signed by the Attorney General. Self-explanatory, and I urge members to support.
Honourable members, the question is that the Parliament do authorize the Attorney General to make an order to declare that the 2022 supplement to the revised edition of the laws of St. Lucia, as specified in the order, shall come into force on such date as may be appointed by such order as an authoritative version of the law. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Finance Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for the resolution standing in my name. Whereas under section 1091A of the Value Added Tax Act Cap 15.42, the Act, it is provided that the Minister of Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules in the Act, and whereas it is further provided under section 1092 of the Act, that an order made pursuant to section 1091 of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament, except where the amendment is to the customs tariff headings only. And whereas the Minister for Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax amendment Schedule 3, number 6 order, to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to delete in paragraph 19B of the Tourism Incentives Act, Cap 1530, specified under paragraph 3, and include exemption of value-added tax granted under Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024, commencing from the 15th day of April 2024, and 2, Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act Cap 3.18, commencing from the 14th day of May 2014 and terminating on the 15th day of April 2024, unless saved under section 15 under section 156 of the Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024. Be it resolved that Parliament by affirmative resolution approves the draft value-added tax which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to delete in paragraph 19B Tourism Incentives Act Cap 1514 specified under subparagraph 3, and B, include exemption of value-added tax granted under the Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024, commencing on the 15th day of April 2024. And 2, Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act Cap 3.18, commencing from the 14th day of May 2024 and terminating on the 15th day of April 2024, unless saved under section 156 of the Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024. Mr. Speaker, this motion, Mr. Speaker, is a motion that is intended to facilitate and to encourage investment in the tourism industry, mega investments in the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker. And as you know, the tourism industry has been performing in a very satisfactory manner. We have passed our 2019 figures, and in fact, the figures for this year, particularly the month of October, have been the best figures in the history of St. Lucia's tourism. Mr. Speaker, I will allow the Honourable Minister for Tourism to expand on the reasons for the passing of this motion.
Deputy Prime Minister and Member for Castries South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Just a minute, member. I didn't read the motion.
Sorry?
I didn't read the motion. Just a minute. Let's read the motion. Honourable members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, number 6 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to A, delete in paragraph 19B of the Tourism Incentives Act Cap 15.30 specified under subparagraph Roman numeral 3, and B, include exemption of value-added tax granted under Roman numeral 1, Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024, commencing from the 15th day of April 2024, and Roman numeral 2, Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act Cap 3.18, commencing from the 13th day of May 2024 and terminating on the 15th day of April 2024, unless saved under section 156 of the Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024. Member for Castries South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we engage in the very last sitting of Parliament for 2024. It's an ideal opportunity for all of us to express best wishes to our constituents and to the country. It also offers an opportunity for us to reflect on the year that we've had in Parliament and, in a sense, almost anticipate what will happen in the new year. But I want to start off, Mr. Speaker, by supporting the motion before us, Mr. Speaker, as explained by the member from Castries East. In the Tourism Development Act, which was passed in February of this year, it provides for concessions to be given for investments in the tourism industry. And specifically, it provides for the waiver of VAT, Mr. Speaker, on construction materials, on equipment, and on certain items. It is provided in the VAT Act in a schedule or legislation that provides for the waiver of VAT to be listed in that schedule. And of course, with the passage of the TDA, the Tourism Development Act, it was required that we place in the schedule of the VAT Act the specific legislation, the TDA, the Tourism Development Act, to allow for this to be facilitated. On examination, we noticed that in the VAT Act, what was in fact listed in the schedule is the Tourism Incentives Act and not the Tourism Investment and Stimulus Act, which was an error for the last few years, because the Tourism Incentives Act does not provide for the waiver of VAT, but it is rather the Tourism Investment and Stimulus Act that provides for this. So this motion really corrects those two particular situations. One, to correct an error which was there, because it should not have been, from what I have been briefed on, the Tourism Incentives Act that should have been listed there. It should have been the Tourism Investment and Stimulus Act, Mr. Speaker, and, well, Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act. And now, with the passage of the TDA, the Tourism Development Act, to include the Tourism Development Act on the schedule. So this is really aimed at correcting that situation, and of course, to correctly provide for the waiver of VAT under the TDA. As said by the member from Castries East and Prime Minister, the tourism industry has been achieving unparalleled successes this year, Mr. Speaker. And when we started in this House, I recall as Minister of Tourism, I made a point that I did not want to be a Minister of Tourism that came to the Honorable House on each occasion boasting about successes in terms of numbers. Yes, we are concerned about the quantitative. The quantitative must drive the qualitative. In fact, it's the only way you can have qualitative improvement is if quantitatively you reach that threshold. We wanted to come to the House repeatedly to boast on how we were improving the quality of our tourism. But you cannot take away from the fact that we've had unparalleled success quantitatively. The member from Castries East stated that we've already surpassed our numbers for 2019, Mr. Speaker. Already surpassed our numbers for 2019. Mr. Speaker, 2019 was the best year, Mr. Speaker, for tourism arrivals in this country. And we're already trending at least 4% up on 2019, Mr. Speaker. And on many occasions, Mr. Speaker, for this year, we have had best arrivals for the particular months. So we expect by the end, Mr. Speaker, of 2024, for our numbers to be at least 5% better than we were in 2019, and will represent the best year for St. Lucia. And that's still over arrivals, Mr. Speaker. When you look at cruise passenger arrivals, we're also going to have the best calendar year ever, because the cruise, there's calendar January to December, but the cruise season, which is generally October to May. But if we look at the calendar year 2024, we will top almost 825,000 arrivals, which will be significantly an improvement on last year, and certainly the best year ever for tourists, for cruise passenger arrivals in St. Lucia. So both for stayover arrivals and for cruise passenger arrivals, St. Lucia will have its best year in 2019. In fact, if you just take a peep across to the harbor, since 2019, if you take a peep at the harbor, you will see 4 ships in the harbor. Almost 9,000 cruise passengers are in Port Castries today, Mr. Speaker. And only recently, we welcome once again, since COVID, the first cruise ships in Soufrière, Mr. Speaker. And of course, you would have also noted, Mr. Speaker, the hoardings are going up around the old customs building, which signals that the GPH project will commence in terms of its physical implementation, Mr. Speaker, that the old customs building will be broken down, there will be parking and rationalization of that area. The work will start on the new vendors arcade, its expansion to where the old fire station was, Mr. Speaker, and sometime next year, the boardwalk from the Sanssouci Bridge to the new vendors arcade will be built, Mr. Speaker. A fisherman's village in Banan, Mr. Speaker, a very special place to many of us in here, Mr. Speaker, will be built that will enhance the experience of the cruise passenger arrivals. And of course, Soufrière waterfront would be redeveloped, all part of enhancing and elevating our cruise passenger experience in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, we're also very proud of the work that we're doing as it relates to community tourism. We have said, and it's been a long-standing clarion call of the St. Lucia Labour Party when in government, that the tourism benefits must accrue to as many St. Lucians as possible. Gone are the days of the all-inclusives, gone are the days when a small selected number of persons are the greatest beneficiaries of the tourism industry. If you think about it, Mr. Speaker, the greatest assets of the tourism industry, the extraordinary physical beauty of St. Lucia, the mountains, the rivers, the beaches, the people, Mr. Speaker, our hospitality, all of that belongs to us, the people of St. Lucia. And therefore, the logical question is always, who should enjoy the greatest benefits from the tourism industry? And it should be the people. And therefore, it's one of the reasons why we were so proud to pass the new minimum wage, because it meant almost 4,000 workers in the hospitality sector was able to get an increase on their wages and bring to them greater benefits from the hospitality sector. And keeping that philosophy in mind, we've said we want more St. Lucians to participate in the tourism industry and more St. Lucians to start owning the tourism industry. And it is why we are so proud of the community tourism program, Mr. Speaker, a deliberate effort by this government, building on the past, heritage tourism and other efforts in the past, to make monies available to St. Lucians, either for grant and loan or both, to enable them to invest in the tourism industry and at extraordinary low interest rates. Because we believe our people should start investing in the tourism industry and getting greater benefits. For every tourist dollar that comes to St. Lucia, more of it must stay in St. Lucia. And more will stay if the visitors start shifting from resort-based experiences to community-based experiences. So, Mr. Speaker, at the appropriate time next year, I will stand in this honorable house and I will give a full report on the successes of the tourism industry, not just in numbers, because we'll be untouched by the achievements in numbers, but the qualitative transformation of the tourism industry. Our signature project for next year is an underwater sculpture park, Mr. Speaker. One of the most exciting projects that we would have had in St. Lucia, where the story of St. Lucia, the historical story, the story of our culture, the story of our traditions will be told by having sculptures placed underwater in a park. We are finalizing the selection of the sites for the park, Mr. Speaker, and I notice a particular member is, Mr. Speaker, seeking to find out where the parks will be. Luckily, Mr. Speaker, some of the best areas, I must tell you, for the park is along the west coast, stretching from Canaries up to Cicera, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we will have a gem of an experience, that we will be introducing, starting off with one park next year, the History Park, Mr. Speaker, and we are finalizing the work on it. There is so much happening in tourism, so much happening to ensure that our people own the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to to say that the Tourism Development Act, which is going to be placed on the VAT Act schedule, is a very vital instrument for us achieving those objectives. Our objective is to build a tourism industry that's resilient, that's inclusive, and is sustainable, Mr. Speaker. And that Tourism Development Act has helped us. Another important reason why we need to ensure we get this right, Mr. Speaker, is because of the amount of investment we are now seeing in the tourism industry. Not since, Mr. Speaker, 1997 to 2006 have we seen so much investment in this country as we are witnessing now, Mr. Speaker. Not since that period. Significant investments. At Mont Pima, the Isla hotel complex that is being built, we'll see 4 hotels being built. By May next year, the new wellness center, Lifeco, will open. The leading wellness retreat in the Caribbean will open at the former Caribbean Jewels Hotel, which has been refurbished and been expanded. In addition, a couples hotel, a family hotel, and a villa complex will be built. Right next to it, formerly occupied by the Royal St. Lucian Papillon. You will notice over the next few days, demolition starting on the other 2 hotels for the construction of an ultra-modern hotel resort there, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure if you'll remember, right here in this house, 2017, Prime Minister of that, at that time, now leader of the opposition, announced that a hotel was going to start within the next few weeks on that property. 7 years ago, Mr. Speaker. It will start, Mr. Speaker, and the demolition will take place, Mr. Speaker. And there's a whole story as to why it never started before. But I'll come to that shortly, Mr. Speaker. Of course, Mr. Speaker, you will see over the next few weeks, even more construction started. Right now, we have the Rodney Bay City Center complex that has started. The first building that's going up is a corporate headquarters for Republic Bank, and also will be added is a hotel and shop, restaurants, bars, Mr. Speaker, shopping mall. It will be an entire complex that will be built. It has started, Mr. Speaker. Of course, in the south, there will be a number of developments also taking place. We have right now in this country serious challenges, Mr. Speaker, supply chain issues. Developers saying that they cannot get concrete, they cannot get, materials. Even labor is now an issue. That we've had to engage developers who are saying that there is a shortage of labor. Not that there are not persons who want to work or may want to work, but the quality of workers that they want, and even the kind of dedication and commitment and output they want from workers is of rising concern to them. But these are issues, Mr. Speaker, that we will deal with in the new year. Mr. Speaker, the simple truth is that the economy is booming. You look at the results. The IMF just came to St. Lucia and announced what the growth is expected for the year, Mr. Speaker, telling you that the economy is robust, the economy is growing, and economic activity is at a high in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. So I'm really proud, Mr. Speaker, to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, let me take the opportunity also to say a few other things. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I probably will not speak again this afternoon, so I will want to take the opportunity to wish my constituents the very best for the season. We've already had 2 children's parties in Marigot, in Basta Joseph. We will have, Mr. Speaker, some, Mr. Speaker, have huge entertainment experiences. We are a lot more humble, Mr. Speaker. We have smaller community type activities, Mr. Speaker. So we're going to have a party in Goodlands, one in Cicero, and one in Banan, Mr. Speaker. We will also, Mr. Speaker, have our distribution of hampers for the sick and shut-in. And of course, Mr. Speaker, the STEP program started yesterday. And, a few hundred persons from Castle South will be getting some employment and some, income for the season. We look forward, Mr. Speaker, to our always anticipated black cake and sorrel competition, where we test the communities. 11 community groups will take part this year to see who can bake the best black cake and make the best sorrel, Mr. Speaker. And luckily, every year I'm one of the tasters, so I get an opportunity to taste the different styles of baking, Mr. Speaker, and making sorrel. And of course, we run it up with our solo night, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if the member from Duford North will drop by, but we always have a group from Denry North that comes and entertains us, Mr. Speaker. So we're going to have a very good Christmas season. And it's going to be good because the people have confidence in the government. The economy is doing well. It's not too much. Nobody has too much, Mr. Speaker. Everybody wants a little more. But we are endeavoring to put people first and to make sure. In the constituency, we've had a good year, Mr. Speaker. Good year. We're completing the restoration, the rehabilitation of the Cicero playing field, putting lights, a dressing room, seating, Mr. Speaker. It's been a long battle. Because, Mr. Speaker, the former Prime Minister, Kenny Anthony, in 2016, had approved under Robert Louis for the rehabilitation of the Cicero playing field. It was never done. 5 years, Mr. Speaker. The member from Strozel, Saltburst, is not here because he's complaining every day on the shows about how little he's getting. But he never said that under his government, they stopped the works at the Cicero playing field. And it's under this government, under the leadership of the member from Grosile, that support had been given for us to restart that program and for us to get that field done. In Basse Joseph, Mr. Speaker, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we will open the Basse Joseph Community Center. Again, the member from Beaufort South, under his leadership, and Robert Louis, that project started halfway through, stopped in 2016, and nothing happened for 5 years. It's under this government, under the leadership of the member from Castries East, that we've now able to complete that community center, Mr. Speaker. The roads in Marigot, in Basse Joseph, started. The member from Castries North in the previous government came in this honorable house, stood up, announced that the road rehabilitation would start. The boards were put up, and a certain member from Castries office stood up and said that is not going to happen, and the roads were not rehabilitated. And he stood up in the house and he announced it. And again, he had to take this government to come and rehabilitate the roads for the communities of Basse Joseph and Marigot. Still not completed yet, honorable member from Castries North, but we are a lot better than where we were. And I can go on and mention a few projects, Mr. Speaker, that we've achieved, and I'm looking forward to next year. Next year is going to be our best year, Mr. Speaker, because a lot of planning, a lot of waiting, a lot of anticipation, and I'm looking forward to next year, Mr. Speaker. So I want to wish all my constituents a really Merry Christmas and to say to them, Mr. Speaker, that, I'm really honored that I am their representative, and I promise, to do more than anyone else before in Castries South would have done, Mr. Speaker, because they deserve it. It is the constituency of George Charles, Mr. Speaker, of John Odlam, Robert Louis, Mr. Speaker. And I'll tell you, even Desmond Braffett, who was from the United Workers' Party, did quite a bit in Castries South, Mr. Speaker. So it's a continuation, Mr. Speaker, and we would have done quite a bit. But, Mr. Speaker, the year has not been an easy one, truth be told. It's probably been one of the most challenging years, Mr. Speaker, for me personally, and for this government in many ways, Mr. Speaker. A lot has been said. A lot has been said. And to spare me a few minutes, Mr. Speaker, for me to say a few things that are on my mind, Mr. Speaker. A lot of accusations, especially about the CIP. The opposition has been systematic, brutal, vindictive, and malicious every single day. An attack on Ernest Hilaire. Every single day. To the point saying, accusing me of stealing over $1 billion US. It still baffles me. How does one steal $1 billion US? I mean, maybe only the opposition can think of such a thing. $1 billion and manipulation of figures. And not they alone, Mr. Speaker. They have a lot of people who support them, surrogates, jealous people, all kinds of persons who just want to say things, Mr. Speaker. And it goes on every single day. And I've said to myself, I resolve to be the best parliamentary rep that I can be and to be the best minister in the government led by Philip J. Pierre. That's my resolve. Every single day I am motivated by that. I know I'm one of the most blessed individuals around. I know that. My whole life, my achievements, my journeys, I have to be blessed, Mr. Speaker, and I'm grateful for this. So I stay focused and I work hard. Every single day I wake up, I'm focused on working as hard as I can to fulfill those intentions I have. So I don't let the noise, get the better of me. But it's going on and on and on. And the day of reckoning must come, Mr. Speaker. Must come. It must come. So they've said a lot. They said about, they brought in Martinez. Martinez said his piece. He said who Martinez interviewed, Mr. Speaker. And he's going to put me on RICO case, and I'm still waiting for him to put me in the RICO case. And the accusations go on and on of corruption. The Prime Minister called me in and asked me as his minister, have you done anything wrong? And I've had to say to him, Prime Minister, I have not done anything wrong. He asked me in front of my colleagues. He asked me in front of the Attorney General. He asked my colleagues to ask me any question they want to make sure that I accounted for all that was being said. And I will say to the Prime Minister, he can do that anytime any accusation is made. And if anybody should come up with any so-called evidence, I would be the first one to call for an investigation in myself. And not by local investigators. You can go international, because it must be a fraud. I know that. Nobody can say Ernest Sile has bought property in St. Lucia. Ernest Sile has bought anything. Mr. Speaker, what I have is very simple. I'm not a materialistic man. I've never had dreams of having money or properties all over the place. I know God gave me knowledge. He gave me skills that I can always use to be satisfied in life. I have less now than I had when I started in politics. Less property now because I had to sell, Mr. Speaker. I don't go and look to buy property to invest, do anything. I hear about accounts everywhere. I have no accounts out of St. Lucia. I've had, when I worked in Barbados, when I worked in England, you know, I have had, when I worked in New York, I've had accounts overseas. I don't have. All my accounts are here. Every cent can be accounted for. I can say that anywhere, anytime. No contractor can tell you Ernest Sile has ever made deal with them or asked for kickback, no matter what size of contract. I oversaw the building of the National Stadium, the cricket ground. Never, Mr. Speaker, because I know tomorrow I can leave this job and I can walk into another job and earn a living. I believe that. Just like I believe as a young man on the bridge that one day I would go to university and I would achieve an education that I can take care of myself. So a lot has been said, Mr. Speaker, and the time is coming because I've been for the last 3.5 years the best minister I can be. I've really tried. The best parliamentary rep, but the politics is starting because the elections is coming in 2026. I can't continue to just try to be best minister and best parliamentary rep. Not anymore, Mr. Speaker. It's time for me to start answering, because I can fight. And St. Lucians know I can fight back. So the fight back will have to start, Mr. Speaker. You know, I'm accustomed to it, Mr. Speaker. Accustomed to it. I've had to read a document sent by the last government to the U.S. Department of Justice, asking them to get permission from Gmail to give them access to all my Gmails, to read my messages and all my emails, Mr. Speaker. I've had to read it. I've had to read, Mr. Speaker. I've had to read Scotland Yard send an email to somebody to interview them because the last government asked that there be a criminal investigation into me. I've had to read it and I've survived it. And look at my margin in the last victory. Despite all of that, what does it say to you, Mr. Speaker? But they've continued. They've not learned their lesson, Mr. Speaker. They've continued and they've continued. Now some people say, oh, don't say anything, don't answer them. But there comes a time when you must say to them, enough is enough. Now you know why, Mr. Speaker, they cannot break my resolve. They can never break my resolve. And I said to Martinez, and I will say to all of them, I wake up every day with a smile on my face. I wake up knowing that I have issues to deal with in the ministry, issues to deal with in my constituency, and I want to solve those problems, make the lives of people better. You see, Mr. Speaker, I never thought I would be a parliamentary rep, you know. I love politics. I love campaigns. I like to be on the strategy team. I like to plan those campaigns. I never thought I would be a parliamentary rep. It was never my desire. But I got an opportunity for me to be a parliamentary rep, and I became one. I don't go to bed dreaming of being prime minister. George Charles didn't leave no will to make me no conscience of Labour Party or no right to me. I am just honored to serve my constituency. And when I feel I have done enough, I will move on. Those who harbor those dreams, that's theirs. Those who want to go and enjoy all the, the benefits of power, how we call it, Chagoué pouvoir, and those who never really had it but dreaming of it. I am not one of them, Mr. Speaker. So there's nothing they can say or do that will make me feel, Mr. Speaker, I'm any other person than who I am, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, they cannot break that resolve of mine. I cannot be a bitter person. I cannot be an angry person. I go to bed every night, I feel good. You know, when I wake up early, it's because I have so much in my mind to do for the day. So they will say and they will say. But they will have to account, Mr. Speaker. Now, there's a gentleman from Castries East, Mr. Chico, Mr. Speaker, who said a lot of things. And he wrote to the special prosecutor filing a claim about Ernest Hilaire, I think the AG, the Controller of Customs, and the special prosecutor wrote back to him. I'll try and get a copy of the letter and make it a document of the House, and against the Prime Minister. And in that letter, the special prosecutor is telling him that there's no basis for what he's saying. And he was advised by a lot of persons, customs, former customs people and whatnot. There was no basis for it. And even to the point of saying to him, he might have been filing a false claim. Is it a claim? I don't know, a false claim or whatever. Just saying things. A gentleman who acted in a particular manner, I don't want to go into all the details with it because it is still in a sense before the courts. In a particular manner, I sued him. He agreed to apologize to me, so I will not pursue the case. We recorded the apology. He goes in public and said he never apologized. When we recorded the apology, you know, that's how bizarre the opposition is. Bizarre the opposition is. And his claim is, if he asks me for a document, no matter whether it's reasonable or not, and I don't provide it, he can charge me. But Mr. Speaker, if he made a false claim against me, I want my lawyers to take a look at it and take action against him if necessary. But the most bizarre one has been Nancy Charles. Because she's been everywhere, especially last week, saying a lot of things, including, Mr. Speaker, playing some recording from Michael Holden about something that happened at West Indies Cricket, a loan that was made in December 2015. Mr. Speaker, 2015, no, let me get it right. December 2013. December 2013, I was not even working at the West Indies Cricket Board. I was High Commissioner in London. Something, a loan that was made in December 2014, and imputing I was involved live on television, on a talk show with Andre Paul. And she goes on and on, the usual things, joint account, this and that, Mr. Speaker, all the things he led it, Jufali, all those things, Range Rover, Jeep, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I've allowed it to go on and on. People all over the world, fellow ministers, friends, it goes on and on. It stops with Nancy Charles today. She said last week, I cannot respond, I can't even sue her, because it's not true. But Nancy Charles will get a letter today, tomorrow at the latest, to appear in the courts, to prove all the things she said, and to give all her evidence that the things she said are true. I heard they said next year is war. They declaring war. My war is a different kind of war. One member, former from Castries office, say, how do you say, to susek kamo mal, you know, and they've declared war. They said all kinds of things, Mr. Speaker. And they've been going on and on. They've been marching. They've been making noise, threatening persons, Mr. Speaker. Well, I have no intention, Mr. Speaker, next year of just continuing in the same mode of being a nice, loyal, you know, member of the cabinet as a minister. Next year, I'm going to be a political fighter too. Next year, too. So if they want to fight, we'll have a political fight. I'm not involved in no physical fight. Mine is a different kind of fight, Mr. Speaker. So it starts Nancy Charles will have to come to court and prove what she said. And anyone that can say anything about corruption will have to stand up and come to a court of law and prove it. That's my first fight. And my second fight is on the ground, Mr. Speaker. In Castries South, because they've already said that that seat is gone. Guy Joseph said it in the last election, Mr. Speaker. They will have to come on the ground. And they will have to see how strong they are, Mr. Speaker. Because I will start fighting, Mr. Speaker. Gone are those days, Mr. Speaker. So as I wish all my constituents a Merry Christmas, I'm telling them, let's get ready for battle, Mr. Speaker. You see, that fight in the next election is about the conscience of this country. It's about defining who we are as a people and what we stand for. We spent 3.5 years putting people first, working hard, Mr. Speaker. That's what we've been doing, Mr. Speaker. And the opposition has been going on and on, Mr. Speaker, saying all kinds of things, all kinds of accusations. Mr. Speaker, they will have to stand up and prove their words. No matter who they are. No matter who they are. If you're going to make those claims, back it up, Mr. Speaker. If you want a political fight on the ground, let's go, Mr. Speaker. Because I haven't started saying things yet, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, when the battle starts, they'll have to explain about DSH and the agreement they signed with DSH, Mr. Speaker. Because DSH themselves told us why the project never started was because of corruption from that government. And they were so bold. DSH, in the final framework agreement they proposed to us in the preamble, they actually said so, Mr. Speaker. They'll have to explain to us about Carbot, the signing of that agreement, Mr. Speaker, about GPH. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot, Mr. Speaker. If they want to go down that road, argue for some policy. Say we made bad decisions. Say Hile made a bad decision. But if you want to go down that road, Mr. Speaker, we can go down that road. And I'm saying to them, anyone who says it about me, prove it, or let's go to court. And let's go on the ground, Mr. Speaker. Say, la no for, Mr. Speaker. So I don't know about my other colleagues who doesn't want to fight, who doesn't want to do anything, but I am not going to be part of this anymore, Mr. Speaker. So let me wish everybody well, Mr. Speaker. Let me support the motion, and let's look forward to a glorious 2025. Thank you very much.
Member for Labrie. But if he speaks, the motion closes, eh? Because he's the mover of the motion. So you have to go now.
Yeah, I'm going.
But I've called you already, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, clearly I stand in support of the resolution tabled by the Minister for Finance, the Honourable Member for Kaswiz East, to approve the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, order which seeks to amend Schedule 3 of the value-added tax by A, deleting in paragraph 19B the Tourism Incentives Act, Cap 1530, specified under subparagraph 3, and B, including the exemption of value-added tax granted under 1 Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024, commencing from the 15th day of April 2024, and 2, Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, Cap 3.18, commencing from the 13th day of May 2014 and terminating on the 15th day of April 2024, unless saved under Section 156 of the Tourism Development Act, number 1 of 2024. Mr. Speaker, I give my support to the resolution on the basis that we live in a very different world to the one we once knew. During the Cold War, foreign aid flowed here almost like milk and honey. But the post-Cold War dividends have not materialized for the vast majority of humanity. And so we were confronted with a decline in official development assistance, erosion of trade preferences, and of course the climate crisis that continues is decimating much across the environmental, social and economic fabric of small island developing states. And to make matters worse, Mr. Speaker, great power rivalry is fueling major turbulence and death in the contemporary global political environment. So small states like ours have found ourselves living in a very different international context. We exist in a very different world. We are confronted with economic volatility, high indebtedness. The World Bank and other international financial institutions suggest to us that we should move into financial services, and at every turn they had roadblocks, including blacklisting. We have now turned to tourism as an engine for economic growth, and despite its inherent vulnerabilities, Mr. Speaker, we need to continue to grapple with the objective reality of tourism being our primary driver of economic growth. And so, Mr. Speaker, as small island developing states, we are being urged to reduce and even eliminate tax concessions as a tool to stimulate our sectors. According to these multilateral institutions, this strategy for economic development, which according to them, in essence, is like government trying to actively promote certain sectors, or, as they like to say, picking winners, has failed. In fact, Mr. Speaker, they have even gone as far as to say that these concessions, which they have labeled as tax expenditures, are not necessary and only contribute to worsening the fiscal deficit. We have, however, Mr. Speaker, more recently seen a major shift in the economic strategy in the developed world, in which protectionism has become the order of the day. It is now called industrial policy, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that globalization has been discredited now, and that all countries are implementing policies in their best national or sovereign interest. Notwithstanding what I have said, Mr. Speaker, we do know that the East Asian tigers, namely South Korea, Hong Kong, which is now part of China, Singapore and Taiwan, grew because of the support government gave to industrial development through concessions. There is therefore tangible evidence, Mr. Speaker, that fiscal concessions have an important part to play in the development of our economy once they are targeted appropriately, efficiently and effectively. Mr. Speaker, it is to be noted that all countries provide fiscal concessions, which include removal of import duties on construction materials to promote investment in strategic industries. We are all aware that the tourism sector is the largest economic sector in terms of value added, employment and foreign exchange earnings. It is the primary sector driving economic growth and development in St. Lucia. It is to be noted again that while tourism is not measured as a sector in gross domestic product, the food and accommodation sector is used as a proxy, but still significantly underestimates the tourism sector's contribution to GDP. A review of the GDP, Mr. Speaker, at constant prices over the period 2006 to 2022 shows the growing importance of tourism as measured by the food and accommodation sector, which I have previously stated grossly underestimates tourism's contribution to GDP. On average, the food and accommodation sector's share of GDP ranged from a low of 17.2% in 2008 to a peak of 20.9% in 2019. I have deliberately excluded 2020 because of the impact of COVID, when we all witnessed that the world lost its appetite for trade and investment. In that year, the food and accommodation sector accounted for a mere 9.2% of GDP. I repeat, it accounted in 2020 for a mere 9.2% of GDP. We saw the massive impact that the sector had on GDP growth in 2020, resulting in a contraction of GDP of 25.4%. In that same year, Mr. Speaker, the food and accommodation sector contracted by a remarkable 67%. There is still significant potential for growth in the tourism sector. And Mr. Speaker, we understand that we are competing with other states for tourism investment. We therefore need to provide fiscal concessions to ensure that we can remain competitive in spurring new investments in the tourism sector and thus enhance the growth of our economy with the resulting spin-off benefits in the form of employment, growth in other sectors dependent on tourism, and foreign exchange earnings, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the resolution tabled by the Minister for Finance is a simple one, as it seeks to continue the concessions that were given under the Tourism Incentives Act 15.30, which has since been revoked given the passage of the Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024. We must also accentuate in this Honorable House, Mr. Speaker, that the Tourism Development Act, which not only consolidated the previous 3 pieces of legislation, namely the Tourism Incentives Act, Cap 15.30, the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, Cap 15.03, and the Tourism Levy Act, Cap 15.36, which have all been repealed, but also catered for an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable tourism sector. The Tourism Development Act, Mr. Speaker, provides a number of incentives which are stated in Schedule 3 of the Act and covers the following areas: 1, tourism accommodation; 2, food and beverage; 3, tourism transportation; 4, recreation; 5, meetings, incentives, conferences, and other planners; 6, tourism facilitation services and travel trade; 7, tourism niche market; 8, specialized support areas. And of course, Mr. Speaker, the picture is evolving as a holistic approach to building a tourism sector that will be able to withstand the turbulence of the current moment. As more countries around the world embrace tourism as an engine for economic growth, the terrain is becoming more competitive. As I prepare to close, Mr. Speaker, a review of Schedule 3, Part A, which shows the incentives to be provided for tourism investment, shows that VAT is exempted on building materials, equipment, furniture, fixtures, and fittings. In addition, Schedule 3, Part D, Mr. Speaker, incentives are granted for resilience. Under this section, VAT is exempted for services, Mr. Speaker. Based on the foregoing, it is clear that our government has broadened the concessions offered to investors in the tourism sector, small, medium, and large investors, in recognition of ensuring that we encourage developments in all areas of the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, I would like to add that our government has been responsible for the expansion in the tourism sector, adding to the number of rooms in the hotel industry. The previous government did not add 1 hotel room during the period 2016 to 2021. Sometimes I hear those who chastise this government about they should have built a hotel in Canry's Ancillary. There are those who spent 2 entire terms as Minister for Tourism, didn't build a cage in that area. And Mr. Speaker, if anyone who points their finger at the government and talk about hotel rooms, I want them to show us the hotel they built in the constituency of Ancillary Canries, and we are going to double the number of rooms that you all have on that hotel. By tomorrow, we are going to double it instantly. It is also clear, Mr. Speaker, that under the current tenure of our government, there are a number of hotel investments that are currently being implemented or will commence construction shortly. It is to be noted that Section 113 of the value-added tax states as follows. Exemption in another law. A provision is another law that grants an exemption under Section 17 or 21 of this Act, or a tax at a rate of 0% under Section 16 of this Act does not come into effect for the purposes of this Act until a corresponding amendment is made to this Act. There is therefore a need, a pressing need, Mr. Speaker, to make an amendment to the value-added tax to give effect to the VAT concessions granted under the Tourism Development Act. There is also the need to preserve the VAT concessions granted under the Tourism Incentives Act, cap 3.18, commencing from the 14th day of May 2014 and terminating on the 15th day of April 2024, unless saved under Section 156 of the Tourism Development Act, number 1 of 2024. So I close, Mr. Speaker, by accentuating my firm support to the resolution to amend the VAT Act by deleting in paragraph 19B the Tourism Incentives Act, cap 15.30, specified under subparagraph 3, as this Act has been repealed, and B, including the exemption of value-added tax granted under 1 Tourism Development Act, number 1 of 2024, commencing from the 15th day of April 2024, and Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act 3.18, commencing from the 14th day of May 2014 and terminating on the 15th day of April 2024, unless saved under Section 156 of the Tourism Development Act, number 1 of 2024. Mr. Speaker, this is a progressive government implementing progressive policies to ensure that we build resilience in the economy and continue to develop all sectors. Long live the Prime Minister, long live the member for Castries East, and long live this government to continue the development of our country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Grosley.
Mr. Speaker, I rise briefly to support the resolution to approve this value-added tax amendment. Mr. Speaker, I do so because this government has been fiscally prudent from day one. And as such, Mr. Speaker, I support any additional maneuvering, especially as it pertains to the tourism sector, that will allow this country to continue to further develop, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister for Youth Development and Sport, it was under this government that a historic move was made. A historic move that when history looks back at all that was done in 2024, history will be kind to the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it was this government that made the bold move to remove VAT on all sports equipment for the young people of this great nation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is these things that happen in a symbiotic nature that allows for St. Lucia to flourish in the way it has done in the year 2024. Because, Mr. Speaker, we've seen what Julian Alfred has done, and the motivation and the beaming of pride we've seen on sports venues in St. Lucia. And so, with the removal of VAT on all sports equipment, we now as MPs, Mr. Speaker, can purchase even more equipment to see further development of youth and sports in this great nation, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we speak about the symbiosis of our ministries, we see that under sports tourism, Mr. Speaker, our biggest sports tourism product, Mr. Speaker, or anything that acquired or happened in the last 12 months, happened at the Olympics of Paris in July 2024. And so the connection is there, that when a government can sit and think of creative ways to develop different sectors, we can have huge results to the development of this country. And so, Mr. Speaker, as we see another move to further stimulate our tourism industry, we think back, Mr. Speaker, of what we have done and the many things we have to accomplish going forward. And so, Mr. Speaker, as the Minister of Sport, I have no issue with supporting this motion. But, Mr. Speaker, today gives us an opportunity to really reflect not just on what we've done as a government, not just what we've done in terms of VAT, Mr. Speaker, but what we've done in each of our ministries to contribute to this country, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I beg you leave, Mr. Speaker, to allow me to thank the hard-working staff of the Ministry of Youth Development and Sport for their hard work and the diligence that they put forward in the year 2024. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank the boards under my purview, Mr. Speaker. The boards that have taken advantage of the support that they received from this government throughout the year to further develop our facilities and to develop this country, Mr. Speaker. And I speak of, Mr. Speaker, the board of NLA, and I speak of Sports St. Lucia, Inc., Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I additionally want you to grant me leave to thank the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports, Mr. Speaker, for their hard work, Mr. Speaker, and also all the individuals that continue to volunteer in youth and sports development, such as the coaches, Mr. Speaker, the administrators, the officials, the curators, the media practitioners, the PE teachers, and the sports parents, Mr. Speaker, who contributed to this historic year in sports in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, this was truly a historic year. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia is now the Caribbean boxing champions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we continue to flourish as the OACS champions in volleyball, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Johnson Charles, Mr. Speaker, has the most runs in CPL history, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the St. Lucia Kings are the champions of the Caribbean Premier League, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, but there is one thing nobody can ever take away from the achievement of this government and the hard work of an individual, Mr. Speaker, and that history will continue to look back at what was done in the 2023-2024 budget, an amount put of over $200,000 towards Julian Alfred for transitioning from a collegiate athlete to a professional. And so, Mr. Speaker, we saw for the first time in our history, St. Lucia, Julian Alfred, gold and silver at the Olympic Games, Mr. Speaker. As such, Mr. Speaker, I also want to ask you to grant me leave as I say a special thank you to the people of Grosley for the unwavering support towards me during the year 2024, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2024, the people of Grosley supported me while we commenced, and we have ongoing the Grosley Police Station Divisional Headquarters, Mr. Speaker. The people of Grosley continue to support as we develop the Grosley playing field, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the people of Grosley continue to support as we construct the Grosley Recreational Facility, Mr. Speaker. The Grand Riviere Community Center, Mr. Speaker. The expansion of the Grosley Polyclinic, which is coming, Mr. Speaker. And of course, Mr. Speaker, the many roads, including the Monsitor to Rivière Road that is ongoing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the people of Grosley in 2024 for their support as we place bus shelters in the communities of Tuya, Rivière, Beauséjour, Mr. Speaker. and the list goes on and on and on, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the women's, Mr. Speaker, the women's organization, Mr. Speaker, the youth group, Mr. Speaker, the Grosley Football League, and the other administrators for their continued support, Mr. Speaker. And so, I want to wish all these people, Mr. Speaker, the people of Grosley and St. Lucia, all who have contributed to 2024 success, a happy Christmas, a very Merry Christmas, and a prosperous New Year, Mr. Speaker. And of course, as I said earlier, I have no problem supporting this motion and this resolution to approve the value-added tax amended, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Minister for Finance. Member for Soufriere.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the resolution presented by the member for Castries East, and that has been supported by other speakers here this afternoon. But, Mr. Speaker, I will be extremely brief, but I want to take this moment to speak on two specific issues. Mr. Speaker, over the past few weeks, as we focus on VAT and the tourism sector in particular, I want us to reflect on two individuals who have contributed significantly to that industry and who are not with us today. One is Ms. Lorraine Charles St. Jules, who, as a marketing officer, I met her around the world speaking about tourism for us in St. Lucia. And her most recent office was that of the CEO of the SLTA, Mr. Speaker. We heard of her passing, and I want to take this moment to express my condolences to her family and to the industry. In addition, Mr. Speaker, last week we heard of the passing of Mr. Nick Trubiscoy, a man over 50 years ago, Mr. Speaker, came to St. Lucia, fell in love with Soufriere and the people of Soufriere, and using his exceptional architectural skills and vision, gave Soufriere and St. Lucia two gems, Enchasne Hotel and Enchasne Jade Mountain, Mr. Speaker. These two hotels, particularly Jade Mountain, is a unique piece of architecture that sells itself throughout the world. Today, as I represent the people of Soufriere Foshe-Jacques in this constituency, in this honorable house, on their behalf and on behalf of the tourism industry, I want to express condolences to Caroline Trubiscoy and the entire Trubiscoy family for the contribution, for the loss of Nick Trubiscoy. Mr. Speaker, Nick was a community man. He loved the people of Soufriere. He made a significant contribution to who we are, especially when you look at his two businesses, the employment that he has provided to the community of Soufriere. So the people of Soufriere mourn the loss of what I say is a great Soufriere son. Mr. Speaker, with your leave, I want to take this moment, as it is the festive season, to thank my constituents of Soufriere Foshe-Jacques for the tremendous support that they have provided. Today, I will not articulate nor list what we have achieved. I will use this moment, Mr. Speaker, to wish every citizen of St. Lucia, but more than anything else, my constituents, to wish them a Merry Christmas and a peaceful and productive 2025. Mr. Speaker, what is so important for us is the camaraderie and the life that we have lived. And I want to remind all of us that within this season, let us reflect on the culture of what we knew as good living in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, je voulais prendre un moment pour remercier toute constituante sous Foyer Fauché Jacques pour support yo a nous pour manière nous travailler ensemble comme peuple pour mener community ensemble. Moi voulais souhaiter tout le monde joyeux Noël et puis un bon l'année 9. Et pour nous continuer à travailler ensemble comme peuple à la paix et puis pour supporter yon à l'autre. L'année chère bagaille nous j'ai fait ensemble et que l'année chère bagaille nous pour continuer à faire ensemble. Mais nous pour faire ensemble à la paix et puis pour une famille, pour un peuple, pour nous travailler ensemble. Merci et que moi supporter la résolution du gouvernement.
Member for Babano.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the motion on the floor as presented by the member for Castries East, as we look at the motion which speaks to the amendment to the Tourism Incentive Act, Cap 1530, specified under subparagraph 3, that includes the exemption of value-added tax granted under the Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024, commencing from the 15th day of April 2024. Mr. Speaker, as we are fully aware that tourism plays an important role in our growth and economic development in St. Lucia. And Mr. Speaker, I add the acronym AGRI to tourism because Babono constituency, which I represent, is very strong in agriculture. And if we have to support tourism, we must have food to feed our tourists. And therefore, agriculture plays a critical role in supporting the tourism industry. And Mr. Speaker, tourism as the main economic driver in St. Lucia has received tremendous support from this government. I have sat in this government for the last almost 3.5 years, and I have seen the support that this government, under the leadership of the Prime Minister and member for Castries East, in terms of incentives to tourism projects in St. Lucia. And that has helped the tourism industry to thrive, where our local people can benefit from tourism. We have seen incentive for agriculture. We have seen incentive for small business. And all these are indicators to drive economic growth. And for this, Mr. Speaker, I am in full support of the motion on the floor because this is the breadbasket, this is the livelihood of every single St. Lucian. Mr. Speaker, I want to take leave quickly to recognize and celebrate and observe the 16th day of activism on violence against women. And I want to recognize in our midst in this house Madam Karen Tobier, President of Sewell Branch in St. Lucia. And you would have noticed that our parliamentarians are wearing the burgundy flower as a symbol in support of the move to stop violence against women in this country. Lilac. So we can either wear orange or we wear lilac. Today we decide to use the lilac color, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I know you are a strong supporter of the move that there should not be violence against women. And the men are asking that we stop violence against them too. So violence should not be encouraged at no time. There should be zero tolerance for violence in our country, whether it's against women, men, and children. Mr. Speaker, I want to seek your permission to wish the people in the constituency of Babodo the very best for the Christmas in 2024. And I ask that we pray that we look forward to a very great 2025. I want to thank my family, the constituents of Babodo who have entrusted their confidence in me, the Prime Minister and member for Castries East, and my cabinet colleagues for their support. My colleagues working with me in the Ministry of the Public Service, Labor and Gender Affairs. I say a big thank you for your support in keeping this government going. Mr. Speaker, I want to describe this Christmas as one of the best Christmas for the people of Babodo. I call it the best Christmas because we'll start with our bamboo bursting competition. And the bamboo that bursts the loudest will get the first prize. Yeah? Oh, we have the sound indicator. Yeah, that's right. And we have judges, Mr. Speaker, a group of judges to determine who has, and they have volcano, they have dynamite, they have all kinds of, and they are in a team. We had it last year, it was the first initiative, and this year is the second one. Alternative sports. We have our children's party, Mr. Speaker. We will give the children their toys, their gifts, and they will have fun. We will have our Red Plus party. Christmas is a red affair, so we'll have our Red Plus party. And we'll distribute the hampers, Mr. Speaker. We'll give out the vouchers. I think the days for ham, turkey, and gas is almost over, because we have a leader who believes in people's dignity. And what he said is, do not buy what you think the people want. Give them something so they can choose what they want for the Christmas. And that is where the voucher plays a critical role. If they want ham, they will buy ham. If they want turkey, they'll buy turkey. If they want to buy a cylinder of gas, they will buy a cylinder of gas. So we give them that choice. But we also help some with the hampers because they may not be able to go to the stores to shop. Mr. Speaker, I want to articulate that in Babodo, we have focused a lot on the social programs and building human resource capacity. And that is where we, as a government, have helped the people in this country, and Babodo has benefited from this. Where we help the people put food on the table, pay the bills, take care of their health, send the children to school, fix the roads. And this is how we give people the strength and the courage for them to be able to carry on. Create jobs for them, Mr. Speaker. And in Babono is a very wide and complex community. And therefore, you will not stop in one location and see what has happened in Babono. But Mr. Speaker, I know in 6 of the communities where the community buildings were abandoned, they are all back in use, Mr. Speaker. The bus stops, we have built 6 of them so that the people can be sheltered while they wait for transport. We have erected our road signs so people can navigate easily in Babono. We have started working on the playing field, especially the Babono playing field, Mr. Speaker. Thanks to the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports coming to our rescue, where the Babono Secondary School now will get a place for the children to recreate and release some of their excess energy. We have built so many footpaths, repaired grills and drainage, Mr. Speaker. We have repaired over 100 homes in Babono. We have built over 13 homes for the underprivileged persons in Babono. We have given support to the schools. Mr. Speaker, as I speak now, I know there are over 400 people on the ground in Babono who are actually engaged in employment. And I know these people will have a very good Christmas. Mr. Speaker, I thank the Prime Minister and my cabinet colleagues for keeping this country afloat. This morning, Mr. Speaker, when I heard the Minister of Health and the Prime Minister speak on the direction of health in this country, Mr. Speaker, I feel good. I know St. Lucia is on the right path. And we have to continue to promote healthy lifestyle. We need to encourage our people to take their lives seriously. And Mr. Speaker, every time I see and I remember where we started off about 3 years ago, Mr. Speaker, and the level of debt that the Prime Minister had to face, and the amount of debt that he has started wiping out, I was wondering, Mr. Speaker, when will we start building on what we have? But thanks to the Almighty God, we have been able to keep that boat afloat. The sails are in the air. And the Lord will give us the strength that come 2025, we are heading to shore. I am very confident about that, Mr. Speaker, because we care about the people in St. Lucia. And with this, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion, so that this motion is the one that is aligned to tourism, to the factor that contributes to economic growth, that will help us improve the quality of life for the people in this country. And for this, Mr. Speaker, I give my full support to the motion on the floor. And I want to wish you, Mr. Speaker, all the very best for this Christmas and the New Year. I thank you.
The member for Ancillary Canneries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the motion for the resolution to approve the draft amendment to value-added tax, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, anything to the benefit of the constituency of ancillary canneries, and in particular, Mr. Speaker, tourism, will undoubtedly get my support. Mr. Speaker, for the first time in a very long time, we no longer have to worry about espousing our views, our hopes and aspirations. The last time that was done, Mr. Speaker, ideas were taken from the community and are now operated by individuals who are responsible for discharging that responsibility, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there were community meetings in Jackman, Mr. Speaker, and a certain suggestion was made to the then Member of Parliament. Shortly before the election, Mr. Speaker, there was someone else operating that particular endeavor. Today, Mr. Speaker, we now know who is the true owner of that facility, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we get ready to celebrate Christmas, I will also, Mr. Speaker, spend some time on the Rosary River, Mr. Speaker, identifying what has happened to a lot of the instruments, a lot of the equipment that was purchased, Mr. Speaker, for the community that is now being used by the former Member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 98% of the tourists who come to St. Lucia pass through the constituency of ancillary canneries. The Member of Parliament was the Minister of Tourism, Mr. Speaker. If you ask anyone in ancillary canneries, Mr. Speaker, what was done to improve the likelihood that the tourists would stop in ancillary canneries, not just to use the bathroom, Mr. Speaker, for other experiences, Mr. Speaker, it'll be very hard to find, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the current Minister of Tourism, Mr. Speaker, for all the hard work that he's put in, Mr. Speaker, for the benefit of ancillary canneries, Mr. Speaker. It's only a few days ago, Mr. Speaker, we had some community meetings. And all of the loose talk about who win and who don't win yet, Mr. Speaker. Tanto. There are roads, Mr. Speaker, where we know monies have left the Treasury, Mr. Speaker. And if you go down there today, Mr. Speaker, they were never done. But tanto, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we get ready to celebrate the Christmas season, Mr. Speaker, I would like us, Mr. Speaker, to do so and remember its deeper meaning. To reach out, Mr. Speaker, to those who need. To forgive like I have forgiven, Mr. Speaker. To embrace the values of kindness, generosity, and peace, Mr. Speaker. And whilst we celebrate the progress we've made, Mr. Speaker, and I know the member for Grosley read out a small list of what is done, I will follow him, Mr. Speaker, in furtherance to the importance of tourism and community tourism. With immediacy, Mr. Speaker, we went ahead and did the Vanna Venus Ancillary Link Road, Mr. Speaker. And that was done, Mr. Speaker, to drive the tourism through the communities, Mr. Speaker. So it doesn't just go from the main road, but it goes into the valleys, Mr. Speaker. We revamped the fish fry, Mr. Speaker. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, it existed before, but was left in ruin, Mr. Speaker. But we've done that. Rehabilitated the ancillary jetty, Mr. Speaker. We built a bridge in Montciso, Mr. Speaker. We are on another bridge now in Ancillary, Mr. Speaker. We did a crossing in Delago, Mr. Speaker. We have just received word of a €300,000 grant for the mangrove project in Ancillary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we were promised an ambulance. Monies were raised. Activities were held. Today, Mr. Speaker, it is only because of this current Prime Minister that Ancillary Canneries will be the host or the home of a sub-fire station, which includes, Mr. Speaker, an ambulance and appliances, Mr. Speaker. Very shortly, Mr. Speaker, we will commence the rehabilitation of the Canneries jetty, Mr. Speaker. Very shortly, Mr. Speaker, we will open the Canneries restaurant and market, Mr. Speaker. Very shortly, Mr. Speaker, we will commence the revamped Creole port in Canneries, Mr. Speaker. Very shortly, Mr. Speaker, and with the help of the Minister of Sports, we will begin work on the rehabilitation of the Canneries field, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you go down to Canneries today, Mr. Speaker, you will now be able to commute all the way to the waterfall, Mr. Speaker. That was never the case until very recently. Today, if you go today, Mr. Speaker, that is happening. And all of that is happening, Mr. Speaker, because we want to drive the benefits of community tourism to the communities. Hopefully, Mr. Speaker, in January, I will be receiving an underwater sculpture park, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and a lay-by facility in Canaries. Previous to that, Mr. Speaker, we amended the Agricultural Incentives Act to allow us, for the first time, to collect the revenues of what's taking place in the territorial waters of ancillary Canaries, Mr. Speaker. All of that, Mr. Speaker, with no fuss, no excitement, but the eye on the prize, Mr. Speaker. And I will be, Mr. Speaker, defending my victory come January. I will be protecting my victory, Mr. Speaker. I will be protecting my victory. Mr. Speaker, may the light of Christmas guide us into a new year with purpose and promise. May we remember, Mr. Speaker, that no matter the challenges we face as a constituency, the strength of our community and our shared humanity, and the government, Mr. Speaker, led by the member for Castries East, will always, Mr. Speaker, lead ancillary Canaries forward, Mr. Speaker. From my family to the families of ancillary Canaries, I wish them all, Mr. Speaker, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let us move, Mr. Speaker, into the future with gratitude, determination, and faith in what we could achieve together. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Suzel Saltibus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you allowed me, before my very brief contribution, to extend sympathies to the family of the late Mr. Vernon George of Reunion, Choiseul, an individual who was very instrumental while he resided in the UK to ensure that our community received an ambulance to serve the community. He was also a strong advocate and also responsible for raising funds as well for the construction of the Delse Health Center way back, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, he will be buried on Thursday, and I do wish all his family, my heartfelt sympathies. Mr. Speaker, as we discuss the resolution, the motion to amend the value-added tax, Mr. Speaker, I heard the Minister of Tourism speak to the expected growth in the tourism industry and taking our tourism product to another level. And so I believe this motion is a no-brainer. It was something that, I expect that in keeping with the advancement of our tourism industry, that it is something that we know we should come to this House and pass. Mr. Speaker, I take it that you have provided leave to extend Christmas greetings to the various constituencies, and I would like to take the opportunity to extend Christmas greetings to my constituents of Choiseul Saltibus. I want to thank them for all the support that they have continued to provide me and the confidence they continue to share, Mr. Speaker, in my ability despite the many challenges that we face. I was happy to hear the member for Babonneau as she spoke to the whole issue of this government not supporting violence against women in any form or fashion. And I recognize today, I think, is the conclusion of the 16th day of activism against gender-based violence, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, when we speak that language, we should not pay just lip service, Mr. Speaker. But we must recognize violence comes in many forms. Character assassination, public denigration, bullying, Mr. Speaker, is something we see in this country week after week against women in particular, Mr. Speaker. And as a collective, we need to speak against it, and not just, in our small silos and privately, Mr. Speaker, but we need to speak strongly and forcefully, regardless of who the individual is, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I hope going forward, you know, we don't just say the words, but we prove, Mr. Speaker, that this is the kind of people that we are to speak against such. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much.
The member for Vieux-Fort North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a brief contribution, but also to support the resolution on the draft value added tax amendment. Mr. Speaker, this is yet another step in our journey to develop the tourism industry, to develop tourism. It's yet another step in our journey to strengthen the economy. And I want to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to congratulate the Prime Minister, the mover of the motion, but also to congratulate the Minister with responsibility for tourism and his team, his whole team, for the tremendous job that they have put into, the tremendous effort that they have put into this work. Mr. Speaker, as colleagues in cabinet, sometimes you go through a whole term of government. I've had the experience before. I've been in another cabinet led by the member for Vieux-Fort South. And sometimes after elections, you realize that you spend 5 years going to work every day, trying to get things done and so on, but not enough time sometimes to sit down and really look at the work of your colleagues with their teams and to see the impact that they have on the whole collective, on the government, and the work that we're doing together, but each minister has his or her own story to tell. Over the last 3.5 years, Mr. Speaker, we have seen in every ministry stories of sacrifice and growth and development. But in this case, I really want to congratulate the Minister for Tourism, Creative Industries and Investment. When you look at the work that has been done, the level of investment, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity come next year and into the budget debates, we'll have another opportunity, we'll have many opportunities to analyze the tourism figures and to look at the investments and the whole CIP and the kinds of pressures that the minister has been under. Every single day they are trying some other way to tackle the minister, to see how they can juke him under his belly or somewhere. And no matter what they try, Mr. Speaker, he comes back even stronger. And I can tell you that we have locked arms with the minister to ensure that we continue our work. So I really want to congratulate the minister. Mr. Speaker, the new tourism, the new Tourism Act, the amendments, the changes, continue to encourage individuals to invest in properties that already exist. It continues to incentivize all St. Lucians who are interested in the accommodation sector. You see encouragement for individuals who want to add new rooms and even smaller properties, whether you are in rural areas or you are in the inner city. And you see also plans to cause, whether it be at the larger hotels in the north of the country, the south of the country, in small communities, you can see the efforts to really develop the tourism product all around St. Lucia so that more and more people benefit. I'm very interested in this, Mr. Speaker, because in the constituency of Vieux-Fort North, a rural constituency, there are many experiences we are trying to develop, whether it be sea moss, whether it be kayaking, whether it be the waterfall, the Fonjoye waterfall, whether it be the forest at Woodlands or the farms at Woodlands. There are so many experiences we are trying to galvanize the people of Vieux-Fort North around so that we too can benefit from tourism. Sea moss production, there are so many examples. The examples in the area of the culinary experience, trying to develop all of our small restaurants and places where individuals eat to be the best in St. Lucia. Some of them are already the best in St. Lucia, but we are trying to see how we can encourage them so that they can up their game, so to speak, to benefit from tourism. So it's an opportunity for all of us to cause there to be experiences in our communities. Some communities are more advanced than others. They have developed various experiences, but there is an opportunity for all of us in every constituency to develop these products. I look forward in Vieux-Fort North to the development of sports tourism. And I want to thank the Prime Minister, Minister for Sports, for the development of the Bellevue playing field, and that has progressed well. And we have tested the lights, and we are now hoping to work on the grounds and the washrooms and so on. And that too will help develop sports tourism, where St. Lucians, whether you be from Grosile or whatever, come down to Vieux-Fort North to play football or whatever. That too is tourism. And I also want to encourage those in the cultural area to look forward to certain developments in the creative industries that will be coming to Vieux-Fort North, and we look forward to those developments. The figures speak for themselves, Mr. Speaker. The increase in visitor arrivals and the record-breaking numbers that we are having, the figures speak for themselves. And these things do not just happen just by talk. These things don't just happen because you believe you can speak of tourism or you're a guru. These things happen as a result of hard work, dedication, planning, strategic focus, and these results come. Negotiations and investments. These things do not just happen. That's the difference between them and us, Mr. Speaker. That's the difference between the last government and our government. They spoke a lot about a lot of things. 23 islands, employing thousands of St. Lucians, building hotels, 7 hotels 1 year, 5 hotels in Miku, and all of that kind of thing. Just talk, just talk. But we have a strategic direction for tourism, and you can see the results. And for the people in my constituency, what does that mean? When a cruise ship comes to the port in Castries, when the hotels are filled, when when Coconut Bay is filled, what does that mean? It means that you have a greater opportunity to be employed. At Piero, we have our artisans and craftsmen and craftswomen who create those birds out of coconuts, dry coconuts and so on. We have many of them. And they leave Vieux-Fort North with their products, go to Castries, and they make a living out of it. That is what tourism means. It means all of those cooks and chefs who are from our constituency, who are employed in tourism. It means when we strengthen tourism, you can get greater opportunities. And as I said before, create opportunities within Vieux-Fort North. Airbnb, we have a small hotel in Vieux-Fort North, and there are others. We are building some, not we, but investors, private investors are building, because as you know, we have some of the best views in St. Lucia of the eastern coast and the Atlantic Ocean. So this is a great opportunity for us. I want to also say to you, Mr. Speaker, that next year we will be announcing, I'm sure the Prime Minister, Minister for Tourism and so on, there are a few announcements that will excite our artists in Vieux-Fort North, and I'm sure we can develop that product also for tourism. I wish to say to you, Mr. Speaker, if you grant me just a few seconds to wish my constituents well, I wish to thank the Prime Minister, my cabinet colleagues, officials of the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, staff of the various hospitals, the wellness centers, all the nurses, all the security people, everybody who works in the health sector, everybody who works there. I want to thank you for your work and your sacrifice during the last calendar year. We still have a few months in the fiscal year, still have a few months left. But I want to thank them, Mr. Speaker, because we've had a very challenging time over the last few months. We've had some challenges, but our government has risen to those challenges as we've always promised. The Prime Minister, the Cabinet of Ministers, in relation to health, we've increased the resources, we are increasing the human resources, and we are facing the challenges with encouragement to the staff and to ensure that we improve our facilities. Just this morning, I was very pleased to have the Prime Minister, the Member of Parliament for Castries South, and my cabinet colleagues, Mr. Speaker, yourself, and many other invited guests to see the opening of services, to mark the formal opening of services, not opening, but to mark the services that are already being delivered at the Dr. Betty Wells Urban Polyclinic, and also we were at the Dr. Winston Paris Medical Complex. You will hear a lot more about that, Mr. Speaker. You will hear a lot more about that. So right now, hundreds of St. Lucians have been going to get their eyes checked. We are preparing for surgeries in January, and that is happening already, Mr. Speaker. The Diabetic Retinopathy Clinic is open again with new equipment, refurbished facilities, and we have assisted the OKEU Hospital to the tune of $15 million, supplies, and so on. And we are having some of the services from the Castries Health Center at the Dr. Betty Wells Urban Polyclinic. And so, Mr. Speaker, I really wish to thank all those who continue to give our government support. The Prime Minister, Cabinet colleagues, staff at the ministry, the nurses, the doctors, and everyone. I just want to say a few more things. It's Christmas time, Mr. Speaker, and it's always a very challenging time for our health professionals. At the hospitals, the emergency department, Christmas is a very busy time. But I just want to encourage St. Lucians. It is something many of you don't know, Mr. Speaker, that during the Christmas season, and sometimes the nurse system, Minister, just leave that alone. But during the Christmas season, it is very unfortunate and sad that we see an increase in the number of patients who their relatives take them to the hospital and don't return for them until after Christmas. You may not believe this, Mr. Speaker, but at both the OKEU Hospital, at the St. Jude Hospital, we see a number of individuals who come with their either elderly relatives or sick relatives, and they come to the hospital with them seeking services, only to find when these people are ready to be discharged, they don't come back for them until late, maybe January or so on. It's very clear what is happening. So I want to encourage St. Lucians. Christmas is a time we have to really care for each other. Let us try our very best not to leave these responsibilities to the hospitals, because what we are doing is we are placing pressure on the hospitals. We are occupying the beds that should be left for emergencies. A lot of that is happening, Mr. Speaker. We have a number of families who have had their relatives at the hospitals for years. No one is claiming them. A number of individuals are just living at the hospitals. And those kinds of things, we need to open up and speak about them so that we can relieve. When you hear about pressures at the hospital, there are no beds and so on. A number of the beds are occupied by what we call long stay patients, long stay individuals. They are individuals who are just living at the hospitals. And now we are trying our very best to work with social services, you know, to help ease the situation. So, là où mène famille ou à l'hôpital là pour service, viens acheter famille ou souple. Parce que yo ka occupy ces couches l'hôpital là, avec les nous emergency, nous passage une couche parce que là ni moun qui est l'hôpital là, yo ka couyer long stay. Ça veut dire famille yo mène yo l'hôpital là avec yo pas ka vie pour yo. Docteur ka acheter qui laisse qui famille yo, tout le monde ka di yo pas connaître moun ça là. So those kinds of pressures, especially during the Christmas season, they force the doctors and the nurses and so on to do all kinds of things to accommodate. So let us help the health professionals. Watch how you drink, your driving, the conflicts and so on. All of these put pressure on the emergency services, both at St. Jude Hospital, Soufrière Hospital, at all of our hospitals. Although Tapio is a private hospital, but the services at Tapio are necessary at the Tapio Hospital. If we live recklessly, endless accidents and so on, and we have the emergency services at Tapio, at St. Jude, at OKEU under pressure, then it makes our whole situation difficult. So I just want to send this little message out for the Christmas season. And I want to wish all of my constituents, my own family, everybody, I want to wish you well. I just want to sound one last little note of caution. We are parliamentarians. Let us not threaten our people to get ready for war. It's Christmas time. I hear many on the opposite side say, just take your break for Christmas, next year is war. So when they come to the parliament and try to behave nice as if everybody, Merry Christmas and so on, but on the public political platforms, they're saying, take a break for Christmas, but from January is war. I want to urge all of my constituents and all of us, all St. Lucians, let's have our healthy political debates. Let us enjoy Christmas with each other. Whether you are Flambeau or Labour or Noba or Nopi, we are family. Let's have a good Christmas, and after that, let's have our political debates. But this thing of drumming up war, and they say they love St. Lucia, it's war after Christmas. Let us encourage our constituents, especially in this environment, especially in this kind of environment in the Caribbean, in the world. Let us encourage our constituents to be at peace with each other and to love each other, even though we have our political differences. Mr. Speaker, I wish you, your family, and all the staff of the Parliament, everyone, colleagues, a peaceful and safe Christmas. Thank you very much.
Minister for Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank members for supporting this motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just want to make just 2 points. Sometimes you hear people, the rhetoric that this government doesn't know about business, this government doesn't know about tourism, this government doesn't know about investment. But Mr. Speaker, I heard my colleague talk about next year and the threats of war and the threats of battle next year, Mr. Speaker. Let me tell you what will happen next year, Mr. Speaker. Next year, Mr. Speaker, the economy of this country will grow by 4.2%. Next year, we are going to be releasing in the public 79 new police recruits, and in March next year, we're going to be training another 79 new police recruits. Next year, we're going to have the Tourism Ranger Program, employing another 50 rangers. Next year, we're going to be open the Northern Police Headquarters, the most up-to-date and modern police headquarters in the CARICOM. Next year, Mr. Speaker, we're going to be starting the GPH program. Next year, we're going to be opening St. Jude's Hospital. Next year, we're going to be continuing the housing program at Rockall, and we're going to be starting one at Talvan, and hopefully, we're going to be starting one in Canaries. Next year, we're going to be starting work on the refurbishing of the George Odlum Stadium. Next year, we are going to be continuing construction on not one, not two, not three, but 4 new hotels. Next year, Mr. Speaker, we are going to complete the resurfacing of the Chaussee Road, and we're going to start work on the Cassius-Grizzly Highway. Next year, Mr. Speaker, we are going to be buying a pothole truck that will begin to pothole immediately when the holes appear in the roads, immediately. Next year, Mr. Speaker, we are going to be opening the wellness, we're going to be opening the emergency care center at Victoria Hospital in the Sir Winston Paris complex. Next year, Mr. Speaker, we're going to be expanding the Grocery Polyclinic. Next year, Mr. Speaker, we are going to do work on 5 new schools, including extensions to the Enchipo Secondary School and extensions to the Grand Riviere School, Mr. Speaker, next year. Next year, Mr. Speaker, we are going to be opening the Bar St. Joseph HRDC, Human Resource Development Center. Next year, we're going to be opening the Grand Riviere Research Center. Next year, we are going to be opening the Larry Susev Center. Mr. Speaker, next year, you want to know more about next year? So, Mr. Speaker, so you understand why there's that desperation about next year, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, but next year will be a very interesting year. Because next year, I can assure you, tell you one thing, all these lies and all that propaganda and all that calumny that has been spread in this country for the last 2.5 years, we are going to rebut it. And next year, we are going to remind all those who forgot that they were in power for nearly 6 years and 5 years before, because they pretend as if they were never in power. There are a whole lot of angels that came from heaven and descended on this earth. And descended on this earth and found this earth in all sorts of problems. And these guys were the ones who are causing that, Mr. Speaker. Next year, we are going to remind, Mr. Speaker, of what this country was, the sins that they committed, and how this government. Mr. Speaker, I want a challenge. On my feet, I have outlined what this government will do next year. I didn't even talk about what we did in the last year. Some. I challenge them, to stand on your feet and say what your government did in 10 years. Real things. Real things. Real things. Not what you think, or not your vision, not what you envisage, not what you plan to do, not what you did. What you did, what you did. So, is it, Mr. Speaker? So you understand why next year is so important? No, that's why next year is important. So, Mr. Speaker, they're on a run. They're on a trot. But, Mr. Speaker, the same way they want to run on a trot in 2021, all sorts of things. They sat there and they laughed at us. I never forget that, Mr. Speaker. They laughed at us. Look at them. Look at them. The scorn and the disregard and the contempt they had for us. They sat there and talked about arrogance. They sat there and they laughed at us. We were the laughing stock. Look at these guys, Mr. Speaker. But the people of St. Lucia decided differently. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you that this government has done more for the tourism industry than any United Workers' Party government. And when the member for Beaufort South said that the economy was in transition in 1998, when we lost our preferential treatment on the bananas. And you said the economy was in transition and we are transitioning from agriculture to services. They laughed at us again. He was ridiculed. He was ridiculed when he said that the economy was in transition, Mr. Speaker. And indeed, the economy was in transition. Because I was a minister that introduced the transition into financial services, Mr. Speaker. So when they try to play, they want to castigate me or belittle me, Mr. Speaker. My history is there. My performance as a minister of government in St. Lucia is clear. And I challenge, including the former ministers of tourism, to put their record against mine and see which one is better. In all respects, in all aspects, I challenge that. Put your record against mine. Put yours and put mine, and let's see which is better. So when they try to belittle me, when they try to demean me, Mr. Speaker, that doesn't bother me, because my record is clear, and the people of Castries East know that record is clear, and when the time comes, they will repeat what they always did before. So, Mr. Speaker, it was in 2014 that we passed the Tourism Incentives Act. This government, under Kenny Anthony, we passed it to open up investment, to give incentives, more incentives that existed under the previous act. It was our government. We are the government that increased the size from which the number of rooms that hotels could get incentives from. We are the government that taxi drivers, we are the ones who organized the taxi driving services and gave taxi drivers concessions to buy vehicles to improve their fleet. We are the government who did that. So, Mr. Speaker, we're going to talk about records. And they've spoken and spoken and spoken, and every Sunday, every Tuesday, lies, slander, calumny, every day, personal attacks. All in a week. Thursday, this, the whole. But, Mr. Speaker, we are going to go on the record because, Mr. Speaker, the people of St. Lucia feel better under Labour. They feel better because they know, Mr. Speaker, it's about inflation and cost of living and subsidies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that's not the time for that. Mr. Speaker, I know that this amendment will expand the investment in the tourism industry. I want to compliment all my ministers. The economy is doing well, Mr. Speaker, but there is room for improvement. It's continuous improvement. We're not sitting back and boasting. We're not sitting back and saying we have the best vision and we know better than anybody else. We deal with consensus and discussion. We talk to people. We talk to people. We talk to people. We ask people for their ideas and for the opinions, Mr. Speaker. Because we don't believe we have all the answers. We don't. There were weekends when there were 3 murders in this country. We weren't the ones in power. We weren't the ones in power, Mr. Speaker. We were not there when but these things happened. But we didn't blame anybody. We didn't blame anybody. We did not try to castigate people when there were issues in the health centers and the health service in this country, as if these things never existed. Never existed. We did not, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, so where's the plan for war next year? Next year we plan for facts. Next year we plan for the development of the people of this country. That's what we plan for next year. Next year we plan that more children will go to university because of the One University program. That's what we plan for next year, Mr. Speaker. Next year we plan to expand the universal health care coverage for the people of St. Lucia. That's what we plan for next year. And next year, Mr. Speaker, next year, we plan for the upliftment and the betterment of the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. So the Minister of Tourism must get his kudos for marshalling the industry and for keeping to the dictates of this government of ensuring that investment benefits people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, and the investor has an enabling environment to make profit and to get a return on investment. This has been his mandate, and this is what he's been following, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, as I end, I will tell you again that I've spoken to all my colleagues. I've spoken to them. I've told them my position on many things. I've told them that the essence of politics is serving people. And if you come to politics because you believe that you have a God-given right to run this country, that your father died and left St. Lucia for you to run, and you must run it. And if you don't run it, you'll mash it up. You'll burn the house to kill a rat. That's not what you're in politics for. You're in politics to serve people, to improve the quality of life of the people of the country, to leave one generation better off than the last. And what you got, your children must get better, Mr. Speaker. That's what you're in politics for. You're not in politics to lie and to commit all libel and slander against people because the people elected you out of office, selected you out of office, Mr. Speaker. And if that's why you're in politics, that is not the reason why you should be, Mr. Speaker. It is said that politicians are pathological. Some of them, Mr. Speaker, they behave like psychopaths. They must get it. There's a rage. If they don't get it, they do anything, they say anything, they get enraged. They sit in the back of pickups. They do everything. They do anything, Mr. Speaker, just to get into government. They do anything. Things they would have never done in their regular life, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, all what I did before I was in politics, I do the same thing now, Mr. Speaker. My life has not changed. I live in the same house. I live in the same place. All what I try to do every time I get up, is to work with men and women to improve the quality of life of the people of this country. Because I've been fortunate, Mr. Speaker, I got into education. I want to improve their lives. So that's why I'm in politics. So all those who planning for me, all those who planning war, all those who planning destruction, all those who try to call me all kind of names, Mr. Speaker, that does not bother me. I'm never bothered because they've said more. They said I could never be Prime Minister, never. That's what they said, never. Never. Laughed at me, went all over the world. Went all over the world, talking a lot of calumny. So all kind of things, Mr. Speaker. Now the same people they said these things to are laughing at them. Laughing at them, but in this world of politics, that's what it is. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I want to thank all the members. And Mr. Speaker, I want to wish you and your family and thank the members of the Parliament for their hard work. Mr. Speaker, I want to wish the member for Choiseul a very happy New Year, Mr. Speaker, and tell him that he must try his best to be consistent in his words and also try his best not to play to the gallery. Because when you play to the gallery of politics, Mr. Speaker, it comes back to haunt you. Because in politics, you must be true to yourself. You must, in spite of all the noise around you, must be true to yourself, Mr. Speaker. And that's the key in politics. Politics is not about hypocrisy. Politics is not about pretense, Mr. Speaker. And too many people in politics and pretend what they're not. They try their best to be what they're not, Mr. Speaker. You must be real. You must be real in politics. And the people detect you when you're not real. They detect you, they understand you. Because you can't fool them all the time, you know. You can't. The people are never fooled. That's why the people of my constituency are not fooled. In spite of what they say and do with me, the people of my constituency are not fooled. Because they know the parliamentary representative. They know what I stand for. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the men and women in this parliament and the members and the executive of the St. Lucia Labour Party, Mr. Speaker. The party that put me where I am today. I want to thank them. To thank my family. I want to thank my priests. I want to thank my priests. I want to thank the Archbishop. I want to thank all the pastors, all the religious people who keep this country in balance by their prayers, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank them. I want to also tell them that next year, there will be no war between the government and the Catholic Church. So all those who planning a war between the government and the Catholic Church, that will not happen. So all the I would say something about prayer warriors, but I won't. I know. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I thank you for your guidance. I thank you for making me sit down sometimes. And I thank all your staff. I thank my staff, Mr. Speaker, the people in the Prime Minister's office, both the civil servants and my staff, my secretary, my personal assistant, my press secretary, my security detail. I want to thank them, Mr. Speaker, because their job is not easy, because some of them get attacked for me. I want to thank them, Mr. Speaker, and I wish them all the best, Mr. Speaker, and look forward not for 2025 of war, but 2025 of progress and a 2025 of development for the people of St. Lucia. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I really can't recall asking the Prime Minister of the city as being a model politician, but maybe my memory fails me. Members, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 6 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to A, delete in paragraph 19B the Tourism Incentives Act cap 15.30 specified under subparagraph Roman numeral 3, and B, include exemption of value-added tax granted under the Roman numeral 1 Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024, commencing from the 15th day of April 2024, and Roman numeral 2 Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act cap 3.18, commencing from the 13th day of May 2014 and terminating on the 15th day of April 2024, unless saved under Section 156 of the Tourism Development Act number 1 of 2024. And now put the question, as many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Bills. Minister for Finance.
I'd like to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Payment System and Services.
Payment System and Services.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be presented for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of the House of Assembly.
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for first reading a bill shortly entitled Land and House Tax Amendment number 2.
Land and House Tax Amendment number 2.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for suspension of the sign order number 48-2 to allow this bill to go through the remaining stages at this honorable sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that standing order number 48-2 be suspended in order to allow the Minister of Finance to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. And now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this is a simple amendment, Mr. Speaker, to continue the government's tax amnesty and to continue the government's tax relief program by extending residential property tax, by extending for another 2 years, Mr. Speaker, the waiver of residential property tax, Mr. Speaker. We are extending it for another 2 years, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the years now for which the tax has been extended is now for 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and now 2024 and 2025, Mr. Speaker. We are extending the tax, residential tax, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, when you talk about St. Lucia is overtaxed and this and that, Mr. Speaker, the evidence, Mr. Speaker, and I want the people who say the country is overtaxed to tell me what is the percentage of tax. What is the percentage of tax per GDP in this country? I want to answer these questions. And when you hear the answer to that question, Mr. Speaker, you will find the answer for the people who say that St. Lucia is highly taxed or overtaxed, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely no evidence. Just say whatever you want, Mr. Speaker. The Health and Security Levy, projected to bring to this country at its most $44 million. I can extend if you want, $45 million, Mr. Speaker. The services for health alone for the Ministry of Health, $199 million. OKE Hospital, we've doubled from $31 million to $63 million, Mr. Speaker. But you talk about the country being highly taxed. The country with the most exempt items from VAT, the most exempt items, and now the Minister of Commerce is, as we speak, is embarking on a survey, a study to see if we can relook at the zero and the exempt goods, because some people in the chamber, particularly in the supermarket sector, have been speaking about the exempt goods and the zero rated goods, Mr. Speaker. They are saying that there should be some study as to what are the effects on the prices of exempt goods, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I will not be long, Mr. Speaker, but you talk about inflation. And when I hear the misinformation on inflation, on bringing the price of goods down, and what this government is doing to bring the price of goods down, Mr. Speaker, I know and I feel it. I feel it that the price of certain goods are climbing, are rising. I will not doubt it. I won't doubt that there is a certain level of inflation, particularly in food prices in this country. I will not doubt it. I will not. I will not. But the question is, Mr. Speaker, how do you control the price of imported goods, Mr. Speaker? That's the question. That's what no one is asking or is answering, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to look at ways and means, as we've done and we continue to do, ways and means of impacting on the cost of food. I heard somebody that they said we reduce subsidies on food. I mean, this is really, really, really sad, Mr. Speaker. You just said, you say that they reduce subsidies on food. What food? What subsidy was reduced? By how much it was reduced? Not a word, not a word, not a word. Reduce subsidy on food. That's it. Yay! Reduce subsidy on food. Nothing. That's not true. That's not true, Mr. Speaker. There's no reduced subsidies on food. In fact, we've increased it. The Minister of Commerce actually pays to keep the price of flour down. And she'll tell you millions of dollars to keep the price of flour down, Mr. Speaker. That's what we do. We subsidize the price of cooking gas, Mr. Speaker. And there's a hue and cry about the price of gasoline, Mr. Speaker, trying to imply that you want to create some confusion in the country because of the price of fuel, Mr. Speaker. We were not the ones who put 150 on fuel. We are not the ones who put it. And I heard a joke. I heard what was a joke that they have paid. I mean, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, sometimes I believe if we really feed the people of St. Lucia, I don't know. Listen to the last series. The 150 that was put on gas, they are sure that it has collected enough money to pay for the roads. And you say that you say nothing, you know. Ah, shit. Is enough money. They said that the 150 is enough money to pay for the money that they borrowed for the roads, Mr. Speaker. $164 million in direct awards, you know. But we're supposed to pay it already. But, Mr. Speaker, that money was supposed to be in a lockbox. Supposed to be in a lockbox, Mr. Speaker. No one can find that lockbox. And I want to say further that none of that money was used to pay for any loan for any road. That money went into the consolidated fund, like all other revenue, and it was used for services of the country. It was used for services. It went into the consolidated fund. Nothing wrong in that. But why try to play around it? It was used to pay loans. It's supposed to be in a lockbox. What is in a lockbox is the airport development tax. That's a lockbox, and it's there, and we can account for it. But there was never a cent put in any lockbox for any 150. They put that in a consolidated fund, and it runs the services of the country, Mr. Speaker. That's what happened, Mr. Speaker. So and we still continue. And again, Mr. Speaker, the calumny and the lies. We subsidized gas the last time, I think with about $14, Mr. Speaker. During that time, the subsidy for cooking gas was sometimes only $8 because of the price of cooking gas. But again, just say things. And if you say it louder, you believe people will listen to you. Or you repeat it several times, people will listen to you. But as I say, next year will be a year of facts. Mr. Speaker, we are constantly looking at the tax system in this country to improve it, to make it easy, make taxes easier to be collected, Mr. Speaker, and we continue to want to relieve St. Lucians of any onerous tax burden, Mr. Speaker. Nobody likes taxes, and we understand that, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge members to support that amendment, lands and house tax.
Honourable members, the question is that the Land and House Tax Amendment number 2 bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Land and House Tax Act, Cap 15.13.
Clause 2.
Amendment of Section 7.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. And now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, I beg to report that the Land and House Tax Amendment number 2 bill went through committee stage without amendments. Minister for Finance.
Speaker, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Land and House Tax Amendment number 2 bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Land and House Tax Amendment number 2 Act 2024.
Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for first reading a bill shortly entitled Patents.
Patents.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be presented for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of this honorable House.
Okay. Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for first reading of the bill entitled Non-Government Organizations Amendment.
Non-Governmental Organization Amendment.
Move that this bill be presented for second reading at the next or subsequent meeting of this honorable House.
You can stay on your feet, Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Banking Amendment.
Banking Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be presented for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Intellectual Property and Unfair Competition Miscellaneous Amendments.
Intellectual Property and Unfair Competition Miscellaneous Amendments.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move to the suspension of sign order number 48-2 to allow this bill to go through its remaining stages at this honorable sitting.
Honourable members, the question is that Standing Order 48-2 be suspended in order to allow the Minister for Finance to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. And now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this is an amendment to the Copyright Act, Mr. Speaker, 13.07, to remove, Mr. Speaker, there is a few acts that are amended, Mr. Speaker. The Copyright Act, Cap 13.07, the Geographical Institutions Act, 13.14, the Industrial Designs Act, 13.29, the Layout Designs Topographies of Integrated Circuits Act, Cap 13.16, Protection Against Unfair Competition Act, 13.28, and Trademarks Act, Cap 13.30. Mr. Speaker, the bill provides for the amendment of the aforementioned legislation, Mr. Speaker, to remove references to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, and confer responsibility on the Minister of Intellectual Property, Mr. Speaker. The Attorney General, Mr. Speaker. So he's relieving me of some of my duties. The Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, is relieving me of some of my duties. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a simple amendment. You know, the Attorney General is the one who deals with intellectual property, copyright, etc., Mr. Speaker. So, instead of one minister having to kind of cross these duties, where one minister deals with some parts and the other one deals with intellectual property, since all these fall under the rubric of intellectual property in some or the other, Mr. Speaker, we are moving it from from one minister, the Prime Minister, to the Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, a simple amendment that I ask members to support.
Honourable members, the question is that the Intellectual Property and Unfair Competition Miscellaneous Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as without opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Copyright Act, Cap 13.07, Geographical Indications Act, Cap 13.14, Industrial Designs Act, Cap 13.29, Layout Designs, Topographies of Integrated Circuits Act, Cap 13.16, Protection Against Unfair Competition Act, Cap 13.28, and Trademarks Act, Cap 13.30.
Clause 2.
Amendment of the Copyright Act, Cap 13.07.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 3.
Amendment of the Geographical Indications Act, Cap 13.14.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 4.
Amendment of the Industrial Designs Act, Cap 13.29.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 5.
Amendment of the Layout Designs, Topographies of Integrated Circuits Act, Cap 13.16.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Clause 6.
Amendment of the Trademarks Act, Cap 13.30.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill. Clause 7.
Amendment of the Protection Against Unfair Competition Act, Cap 13.28.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Honourable members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, I beg to report that the Intellectual Property and Unfair Competition Miscellaneous Amendments Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Finance Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Intellectual Property and Unfair Competition Miscellaneous Amendments Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This Act may be cited as the Intellectual Property and Unfair Competition Miscellaneous Amendments Act 2024.
Finance Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for first reading the bill shortly entitled National Insurance Corporation Amendment.
National Insurance Corporation Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Order number 48-2 to allow the bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honourable members, the question is that Standing Order 48-2 be suspended in order to allow the Minister for Finance to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Finance Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the bill for consideration is the National Insurance Corporation Amendment Bill, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of the bill is to amend the National Insurance Corporation Act, Cap 16.01, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a short background, Mr. Speaker. Cabinet, by conclusion number 342 of 2021, approved the request by National Insurance Corporation to allow for the payment to be made by the National Insurance Corporation to a third party for short-term benefits, long-term benefits, and funeral benefits to funeral homes. With respect to short-term benefits, an employee must instruct the NIC to make such payments directly to an insured person's employer. In the case of long-term benefits, such direct payments are authorized to be made to an elderly home, a financial institution, or an organization approved by the National Insurance Board. Mr. Speaker, it also amends the funeral grants. In terms of a funeral grant, the amount is paid directly to the legal representative of the deceased, a person appearing to have a valid claim, or a funeral home where written instructions have been received from a person who is the beneficiary of the funeral grants, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the bill amends the interpretation section of the Act by including definitions for the following terms: elderly home, financial institution, money service businesses, and organization. The bill amends sections of the Act that deal with contributions or benefits being paid to and funeral grants, Mr. Speaker. In that section of the Act that provides for contributions or benefits to be inalienable, a new provision is inserted to cover the beneficiary's notice authorizing the Director of National Insurance Corporation to pay the short-term benefits to an employer and the long-term benefits to an elderly home, financial institution, and organization. The amendment of the section of the Act on funeral grants authorizes the payment of the funeral grant to the legal representative of the deceased, a person appearing to have a valid claim to the grant or a funeral home, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the National Insurance Corporation is constantly relooking at its services and the services it provides to the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And one of the initiatives, Mr. Speaker, undertaken by the NIC, Mr. Speaker, was a departure from paying benefits by check to paying benefits via digital transfers directly to the claimant's bank accounts. This upended a previous accommodation to employers whereby benefit checks payable to employees would be sent to the respective employers who had paid the full salary to an employee absent from work because of illness or childbirth and had filed a claim with the NIC in that regard. The employer would then have the employee endorse the check to the business entity. This transition to digitalized payments forced employers to reconsider the arrangement for reimbursement from employee benefit payments. After consultation with stakeholders on the issue, and considerable concern was expressed about the challenges that would face employers in recovering monies paid to employees in circumstances where these employees were paid in full during the period of absence and work. This was of particular concern to large employers, especially the government, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about the government is continuing to pay all the NIC contributions made by its workers, Mr. Speaker. And for the first time, Mr. Speaker, from 20, Mr. Gerard, you know when? From 20, when the government paid in full all the NIC contributions from the employers. So the government has paid in full. So the government does not really owe contributions to the NIC, Mr. Speaker. In addition, Mr. Speaker, NIC pensioners have voiced an interest in assigning their benefits to a financial institution where they do business and to the elderly homes in which they reside. For instance, financial institutions generally require assignments of income, and such an initiative would facilitate these pensioners conducting business with these institutions. NIC pensioners who reside in elderly homes are sometimes unable to transact or experience difficulty in transacting business with these homes and may wish for these institutions to act on their behalf, especially about their pension monies. It is also recognized that the assignment of monies from a funeral grant directly to a funeral home would assist the personal representatives of the deceased in meeting the cost of the funeral expenses by reducing the amount immediately payable for a funeral. Funeral homes are more likely to allow credits with the certainty of the eventual receipt of the monies from the funeral grant from the NIC. In light of the above, Mr. Speaker, the proposed amendment of Section 38 of the Act allows for a beneficiary to instruct the NIC to pay a short-term benefit directly to his or her employers, a long-term benefit to a financial institution, an elderly home, or an organization approved by National Insurance Board. The proposed amendment to Section 61 of the Act allows for payment of a funeral grant directly to any funeral home, provided that a personal representative of the deceased or the person appearing to have a valid claim gives notice in the prescribed form to the director. The forms to support the proposed amendments have been drafted in the regulations to be made to supplement this amendment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I invite members of the House to pass the National Insurance Corporation Bill to strengthen the NIC's legislative framework to provide and to accommodate for their clients, Mr. Speaker. What we're saying, Mr. Speaker, is that this act will make it simpler and make it easier for people who receive NIC benefits in the short term and in the long term, Mr. Speaker. This means before, when somebody receives a check from the NIC for being sick, you would have to sign behind it and pass it over to the employer. That no longer exists, Mr. Speaker. Now the NIC can pay directly to a funeral home, or a pensioner can instruct the NIC to pay directly to a home for the elderly. So that will ensure that the person is taken care of by when the NIC pays their contributions. It makes it easier and it facilitates the person who is receiving the benefits, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask members to support this amendment.
Honourable members, the question is that the National Insurance Corporation Amendment Bill be read a second time. Member for Vieux-Fort South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, may I, at the very outset, say how much I welcome this bill and the proposed amendments to the current legislation. I believe, Mr. Speaker, you are well aware how much I have complained bitterly about the creation of management by bureaucracy in this country and the constant hardship that citizens of this country face when they seek to access government services and they meet particularly difficult public servants and public officers who, for all kinds of reasons, invent all kinds of stumbling blocks or impediments to allowing these individuals to access services. And it's a continuous battle against this bureaucracy, this tendency of public officers to guard jealously and protect what they perceive to be their lawful domain and fail to understand that they have a responsibility to the public. I will continue in that vein at every opportunity that I have. So, Mr. Speaker, I welcome this because the legislation, simple as it is, resolves a major problem and a major issue. And sometimes it's only when you give anecdotal evidence that people can understand the nature of the problem that exists. And I'm going to share with you, Mr. Speaker. I have, on several occasions, had the experience of dealing with responses from the National Insurance Department in V4 regarding the handling of cases of deceased persons. Mr. Speaker, if circumstances warrant and someone applies to the parliamentary representative for some assistance to bury a loved one, and that assistance is given, and if that assistance does not cover all the costs associated with the burial, the individual and on some occasions then turn to the NIC for a funeral grant, and this is then where they meet all kinds of opposition, all kinds of reasons why the grant can't be awarded. But, Mr. Speaker, one of the strange problems I've had in V4 South has been a request by the National Insurance staff in V4 that if the parliamentary representative made a donation to someone who's in need to assist with the burial, I must in turn write a letter to the National Insurance Corporation and tell the National Insurance Corporation that I do not intend to make a claim on the grant that the National Insurance Corporation may be inclined to give to the applicant. Now, you know, St. Lucia's have a saying sometimes, there's a little phrase I've come to really like, make it make sense. Please, make it make sense. Why should I have to be writing the National Insurance to say that I do not wish to make a claim if the grant is given to the individual? Why would I want to, on earth, want to do that? That has nothing to do with me. If an applicant makes a claim to the National Insurance, that's between the applicant and the National Insurance. It means that they qualify under the rules of the National Insurance Act. Why should I want to go and claim money for purposes of the constituency for a relative of a deceased person who has made an application? And why should I be burdened with writing such a letter? Now, you will begin to understand when I refer to these as irrationalities, the irrationalities of management, the irrationalities of public service management. That's the kind of problem that you have. So now I have to find a time, sit down and write something, and usually out of total and utter frustration, I write a letter. And I promised myself that the moment I have an opportunity to raise this matter publicly, I will, and you have presented me with the perfect opportunity to do so, because I want to expose this creeping irrationality in the way we do things. Now, Mr. Speaker, as much as I welcome this bill, there is one other aspect that I just want to draw attention to improve on its implementation. If you look at the clause, and I'm going to zero in clause 5, subclause B, it says, a person appearing to the director to have a valid claim to the funeral grant. You know, Mr. Speaker, what is likely to happen? I'm afraid that when a constituent of mine goes to the Viewfort office and says to the staff member, we are applying for a funeral grant, and this is the claim that we are presenting to support it. You want to bet that some staff member in the Viewfort office is going to tell a person, well, it says a person appearing to the director, so we have to ask the director whether they can give you the grant. You want to bet, Mr. Speaker? And they will defend it by saying, well, I'm sorry, that's what the legislation said, that's what the Prime Minister said the legislation say. And can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, the consequence of that? Because it's now going to take a few days before the request goes to castrate to the director. Well, these days they have internet. Maybe it's going to him by internet. And then we have to all wait until he responds, the director responds. These are the irrationalities that you face. And I hope sometime soon that NIC can really do an appraisal of its office in Viewfort as to whether it is serving the public of Viewfort as it should. And for that reason, to bring an end to any potential irrationality, I want to suggest to the Attorney General that he might want to add just a few words after director when we get to committee stage and say, a person appearing to the director or a member of staff delegated by him or her to have a valid claim to the funeral grant. Just to be sure that the director is going to assign to a member of staff in the Viewfort office the right to make the decision to assess the valid claim. It's up to the director if he wishes to delegate, but at least he has the authority. He has the authority to do so. That being said, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that this is welcome. But I hope the Attorney General will think of any potential, shall we say, hindrances to the application of this. You know, Mr. Speaker, when I see the term a valid claim, I immediately get a little worried. Because the inevitable question is, what is a valid claim? And I hope another irrationality doesn't creep in. And this time the irrationality that creeps in is that they ask for letters of administration or some such thing. This is a favorite thing these days, you know, Mr. Speaker. Anything you ask for a deceased person, they no longer look at the evidence, you know. Where is your letter? Where are your letters of administration? You have to get letters of administration. You apply for Crown lands, where are your letters of administration? Because someone was occupying the Crown lands. And this is one of those areas where I do believe the Attorney General at some point will have to intervene, because it is frustrating for people no end. Sometimes the request that the person is making is of no consequence. Yet you have to go and pay $7,000 or $8,000 to go and get letters of administration. What we have to do is to evidence those things by other means. So, for example, evidence them by affidavit with all the consequences of affidavits if it turns out that the applicant is lying on the affidavit. We are really frustrating poor people, frustrating them, no end. And these are the things that we have to look after, and this is why, Mr. Speaker, I welcome this piece of legislation. I mean, I have the practical experience of how irrational its application has been in the past, It will certainly help to cure a major problem. But I just hope and pray, Mr. Speaker, that this notion of a valid claim is not used again to cause another cycle of frustration. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, when you see we draft legislation, we always have to bear these things in mind. I wish we had a few words to play with after a valid claim to say what could constitute a valid claim. But today is not a day for that. The legislation is too important to pose any problems to it. Just that, Mr. Speaker, I strongly say, let us add those words. Now, I'm betting you some drafter will come here and tell you, Mr. Speaker, oh, but the director always have an implied power to delegate. As if the director will always use his authority to delegate. Most times, they don't do it. That's why you have the problems in the first place. So, Mr. Attorney General, I am putting you on notice in a sense to say don't let no drafter take you in a direction that frustrates the legislation. Don't let them do that, because they always do that to you. So don't let them do that. So let's have the words on, or a member of staff delegated by him or her. And thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Finance Minister.
Chief.
The member for Susan Assault.
To favor one side over the other.
If that's your interpretation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise briefly just to make a contribution on this bill, Mr. Speaker. For sure, I know the registrar in my community will welcome the passing of the amendments, Mr. Speaker, as she has always brought it to my attention some of the frustrations people face when they try to bury their loved ones. But I do have one concern, and I hope the AG and the powers that be take note. In a previous life where I worked, Mr. Speaker, one of the things we always said is that we need to protect people against themselves. And I note section 4B. It speaks to assigning a long-term benefit to a financial institution, an elderly home or an organization approved by the board. And why this section concerns me is because when people are desperate for assistance, they will do anything to get help. And I think for people to assign, and we always know that NIC payment should never be assigned to a financial institution to pay any debt. That's what people will live on after they have retired. Their salaries have been reduced significantly. But when you assign NIC payments and the person gets to that stage, you might well be creating a whole society of destitutes, because people will not have the luxury of, however small it is, an NIC payment to meet certain payments, meet certain bills, because it has now been assigned to pay a loan. So this particular clause concerns me as somebody who knows how people in the time of need will assign anything to qualify for financing. So that's just my one concern, and I raise some just caution as it relates to how this part is handled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Finance Minister.
I thank the member for Choiseul for his observations. We shall look at it, and then if the time comes, we will make the appropriate changes or amendment if we have to, because we do not believe that we're in a situation where we can't change. So we look at it, and if the time comes, we'll make the changes. The Speaker, the member for Vieux-Fort-Sard, the former Prime Minister, made a suggestion to the amendment to amend section 5, section 61B, 2B. We shall, when at the appropriate time, we will make the amendment, Mr. Speaker. We'll put in. Huh? No. No, I said for him.
Member of Viewfort South, you are as doubting as the members of the staff in the Viewfort office.
So, Mr. Speaker, so I want to thank the member for Viewfort South for his support, and I move that the bill proceed with the amendments.
Honourable members, the question is that the National Insurance Corporation Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. A leader of government business, before you proceed, Madam Clerk, I have raised that with you privately. Perhaps you can caution your members. We have just a bare quorum. The idea that members take Parliament for granted and just leave the chamber at any time is not to be tolerated. Please proceed, Madam Clerk.
An act to amend the National Insurance Corporation Act Cap 16.01.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 2.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 38.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 61.
Mr. Chairman.
Member for Physics.
Amendment to Section 61, 2B, after director. So it reads, a person appearing to the director or a member of staff delegated by him or her.
Which section is that, member?
5B.
Right.
A person appearing to the director or a member of staff delegated by him or her.
A person. A person
appearing to the director or a member.
Appearing before the director?
After director. After director. So you should read a person appearing to the director, right, or a member of staff.
To the director or member.
A member of staff.
Yeah.
Delegated by him or her.
Delegated by him or her.
And continues to have a valid claim.
Okay. Members, Clause 5, a proposed amendment to Clause 5. A person appearing to the director or member of staff delegated by him or her. As many in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
As many opposed to it say no. I think the ayes have it. Clause 5 as amended stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Honourable members, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as of their opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable members, I beg to report that the National Insurance Corporation Amendment Bill went through committee stage with amendment to Clause 5. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the report of the committee be adopted and the bill be read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the National Insurance Corporation Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. As amended, sir. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This Act may be cited as the National Insurance Corporation Amendment Act 2024.
Minister for Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Child Justice Amendment.
Child Justice Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be presented for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of this Honorable House.
Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stands adjourned sine die.
Before I put the adjournment, is there any member who may not have utilized the time to wish the constituents? You may want to do that now, because my understanding is that this is the final sitting for the year. So there's no member? Well, it's just left for me to say to all of the members to thank you for your cooperation during the year. It hasn't, like the member for Castries South said, it hasn't always been the easiest of years. In fact, all over the Caribbean, it's proven to be a very problematic year for presiding officers. Just over less than a week ago, in the Bahamas, it's the deputy presiding officer, while sitting as an ordinary member of parliament, and a police officer were both injured when a member of the opposition removed the mace from its place and threw it out of the window. In removing the mace, it hit the deputy speaker. In throwing it out of the window, it hit a police officer on his head who was standing outside. So we trust, but in keeping with what the member for Castries East said, I'm actually comforted by these challenges. Indeed, I have with me this year correspondence from the senior senator of Mississippi, Roger Wicker, in the United States. And if I may, with your permission, just read part of the letter sent to me. Thank you for your work in support of democracy and the rule of law across the entire OAS. Be assured I will keep our meeting in mind, and should any of these matters come before the U.S. Senate, I will certainly take it up. That's from the senior senator in Mississippi, Roger Wicker. Yes. That is a Republican, yes. The senior senator from Maryland, who is a Democrat, shared similar sentiments, as did the Republican congressman from South Carolina, Joe Wilson, and the Republican congresswoman from Wisconsin, Gwen Moore. So at least it's, and last week at a regional meeting of presiding officers, St. Lucia was touted as the parliament where things run. So perhaps, you know, they do say you're not honored at your home, but I do take comfort that St. Lucia's parliament is being recognized not just within the region, but outwards of the region. In fact, while we were sitting, a member of the Jamaican parliament requested permission to visit the St. Lucia Parliament. Of course, this being the last one for the year, he'll have to do that next year. So, honorable members, the question is that this House do stand adjourned sine die. I now put the question, as many have that opinion, say aye. As many as have a contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
All right.
Is the last sitting for the year, and when the House convened, we had an afternoon start. I think that was to accommodate the opening of Dr. Betty Wells Center, Polyclinic, formerly VH, and the eye clinic specifically, and to showcase some of the services which will be offered at the Betty Wells Clinic. And so we had an afternoon start. And when we got started, there were two motions that were presented first off by the Prime Minister and the Minister for Finance, Economic Development, the Youth Economy, Minister for Justice and National Security, of course, Honorable Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre. One of the motions where we saw a lot of contributions was the second motion that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approved the draft value-added tax amendment, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act. And basically, in his contribution, the Minister for Tourism was explaining that a lot of the incentives that were offered previously, tax waivers, etc., was offered under the Tourism Incentives Act. And he said it was an error and that should have been done under the Tourism Development Act. And so it was a move to correct this error. Of course, the minister spoke on the importance of providing incentives to spread out the benefits of the tourism dollar to the broader community. And also in his address, in his contribution to this particular motion, the member for Labrie, Alva Baptiste, Honorable Alva Baptiste, he really spoke on the importance to the St. Lucian economy of offering continued incentives for the expansion of the tourism industry, noting that the tourism industry is in fact a driver of our economy. And he was saying, contrary to some of the subtle pressures that's been put on small island developing states to cut out those incentives, it was very critical that the government continue offering those incentives for the expansion of the economy. There were certain bills that were passed, notably the Land and House Tax Amendment number 2. And this bill had to do with the waiver of property taxes, and it was extended for a further 2 years, the Prime Minister noted, so that the extension of the waiver of property tax, that is land and house tax, would actually be from 2017 to 2025. So this amendment just sought to extend that waiver of land and house tax by 2 years. Another bill which was passed was the National Insurance Corporation Amendment. And in his presentation of that bill, the Prime Minister said it sought to make it easier to pay contributions or have beneficiaries or beneficiaries of NIC contributions to direct their contributions in the short term, whether it was for funeral grants, whether it was to an elderly home, or even to a financial institution. And the Prime Minister said it was to make it easier for these people to pay their contributions. The Minister for Vieux Fort South, Honorable Dr. Kenny Anthony, he had an intervention, and basically he was just speaking on the wording of the bill to make it easier for people who wanted to access this service to avoid the unnecessary bureaucracy, which he says is inherent in some of those bills, when people come to truly access it and to live out the practical applications of those bills. It was something that the Attorney General noted, and the Prime Minister himself welcomed. And there was also one other bill which was passed. The other bills that they were down for first reading and would be would be dealt with in a subsequent the second reading in a subsequent House sitting. But the other bill which was passed was the amendment to a Copyright Act. And according to the Prime Minister, in his presenting this bill, he said it would allow for the Attorney General to assume the responsibility and the affairs of intellectual property from the Minister of Finance. So all in all, this was the debate, this was the proceedings which occurred in the House of Assembly today. And as we said, this is the last sitting of the House of Assembly, and some members took the opportunity to wish their constituents and the members of Parliament and the country at large Christmas wishes, and that we would come back again, God's willing, in the new year to continue the business of the House. So on behalf of all of us here at the Government Information Service, on behalf of my colleague Michael Gaspar, my name is Virgil Leonti. Thank you for watching.